Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BI Livecast series. My name is Jamie Chow, and I am one of the content and community leads here at Brand Innovators. Welcome to today's livecast, which is Beyond Linear TV. Today is really special, and I'm thrilled to kick off this event. We've got a phenomenal event with an awesome lineup of marketers coming to us virtually from companies like Ferrara, T-Mobile, Resident Home, and Liberty Mutual. We'd like to thank all of our marketers for taking the time to speak and present here today. And we'd love to give a big shout out to our sponsors for helping make this event possible. We'd like to thank our audience for taking the time to be here with us today as well. Remember, we are live. The Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen can be used to ask questions, and we'll get to them at the end of each session. The chat widget is also available for our audience and listeners at home. You can use that to connect with the attendees and discuss the event in real time. I'd like to welcome our guest MC to the stage. Justin Fromm is a leading expert in the connected TV and advertising space. He has an extensive experience as a data leader and has helmed the advertising sales research organizations at broadcast networks, OTT, and CTV platforms. He is currently head of research at LG Ads. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks, Jamie. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm really excited about today. It's really exciting to be here with the Brand Innovators team and your audience for a day of ideas and insights for, as you mentioned, going beyond linear TV in marketing. Today, several of my LG Ads colleagues will be joining the guests for one-on-one conversations. Now, LG Ads is the ad sales group for the connected TV inventory on the 120 million LG smart TVs worldwide. Before we jump in, you may be wondering, why beyond linear TV? Well, it's because, as everyone here knows from your own personal experience, TV viewing is now so much more than your regularly scheduled programming from broadcast and cable networks. TVs are now connected to the internet. 72% of US TV households have a smart TV. TVs are bigger than ever. The average screen size of a television in the US today is 50 inches. It's big, it's beautiful, it's the best screen in the house. And of course, there's all the content. In addition to linear channels that viewers can access through a pay TV subscription or over the air, viewers have access to streaming services, both subscription and ad-supported, as well as free ad-supported streaming television services, which offer scheduled and on-demand content. All of this makes the TV the homepage of the whole home. And that homepage, with a unique combination of new, engaging, interactive ad formats, deterministic targeting data for pinpointing audiences across the TV universe, granular measurement that imbues TV advertising with the same ability as digital to attribute exposure to lower funnel behaviors. All of that is the reason we're seeing more and more brands flocking to CTV to extend their traditional campaigns, or dare I say, go beyond linear. So now, without further ado, I'd love to welcome to the stage our first speakers to dive into this topic. For our first conversation, please welcome Catherine Berger, Director, Media and Consumer Experience at Ferrara. Catherine is an expert in public relations and specializes in growing Ferrara's media presence. Her leadership and strategies continue to expand the brand's reputation. Catherine will be joined by my colleague, Michael Mercedes, who is the Senior Director of Sales at LG Ads. How are you folks today?
Doing well.
So glad to be here. Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, I'm really glad you're joining us, Catherine. Thanks. Appreciate it. And I really can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. So I'm going to just let you take it away.
Great. Well, thanks again, Jamie, Justin, Catherine, welcome. Just to start off, would love to just get some background about yourself and your career to date.
Yeah, absolutely. Pleased to be here. Thanks for having me. So I currently am at Ferrara as the Director of Media and Consumer Experience. To date, I have a media agency background. So I started my career with Omnicom, then moved to Horizon. And from there, actually took an interesting career path and went into consulting. So spent quite a bit of time with MediaLink's data and technology solutions practice, and then got the opportunity to move into really a CMO advisory role under Dana Anderson. So I kind of, started really in media, and then got to see, got relatively deep into sort of mobile technology, and then got to be much more broad in thinking about what problems are CMOs facing today. Now at Ferrara, I absolutely love my role because I'm able to kind of use a lot of that eclectic background and really be a change maker, which is kind of where I've found my passion within the industry.
Awesome. Yeah, and introduce myself, Michael Mercedes. I work on the sales team over here. Was also similar to Catherine, agency alum for some time, and then joined up at this company pretty early on and have seen it grow. I think in particular, we're kind of hitting this real stride as far as the channel goes in CTV video, which is great to see. So just to start, real high level, what goals or objectives do you look at the CTV channel for?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really think about video as a whole from a consumer first lens. So as we evaluate the CTV landscape, which is rapidly changing, we still really think about it at Ferrara as TV-like premium inventory. The most of the CTV inventory that we purchase tends to be lean back and us really wanting to be part of that experience for the consumer. So it's really seen as still as our broad reach tool, almost as if it were linear TV, just 2.0.
Got it. So really not too much of a distinction from linear outside of just how it's bought. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I would say that how it's purchased. And I mean, I shared with you, Michael, but I can share with the group, we are truly beyond linear TV at Ferrara. So as of 2022, we no longer have linear TV buys. So we really have positioned ourselves as digital first and digital only in the way that we connect with consumers. So we really follow where the consumers are, and this is where they are.
Got it. Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of the path of how your, video strategy changed and kind of what prompted you guys to move away from linear as a channel.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we have some of the largest and most fastest growing confection brands within the Ferrara portfolio. Confection is very much a traditional CPG in the sense that we do feel like, pretty much everyone with a mouth is a consumer. Household penetration is still critically important. But the bullseye of our target audience is really younger. So that 18 to 29-year-old, depending on the brand, of course. So from my vantage point, we really saw over the course of 2022, a lot of the trends just rapidly accelerate. So as we started to see that happen and viewership of linear TV, it was always trending downwards, but at least for our core target audience, I was looking at data prior to this, only about a third of those 18 to 29, according to Pew as of February, even have access to a linear TV subscription. So as we started to see that happen, we started to really recognize that we needed to shift to be where our consumer is. And so we really do pride ourselves on that consumer first lens in everything we do, to the point where, my entire group here, 1908X, is all about the consumer experience, where, one part in-house agency, one part marketing services, and one part center of excellence, and we're really just grouped around how do we provide the best consumer experience, and that happens to be largely within connected TV, especially as we still think about recency and frequency being really important in our category.
Got it. Yeah, it almost that stat when we first spoke about it kind of blew my mind a little bit. I think we look at TV trends with everyone in mind, right? Essentially anyone under the sun in our country. Which still I think tells a story, certainly, but when you look at the age breaks in particular, which obviously predicts a trend, it gets much more extreme. It almost reminds me of mobile advertising when it was first coming about, right? Like the idea of a phone being used more to access internet than a desktop computer was almost a ridiculous concept, right? And then of course, you looked at younger age breaks, and it was happening like very, very early on. Then you saw Facebook kind of push mobile more, and all of a sudden the entire country consumes more in mobile than desktop. So I almost see it the same way. This is kind of a early indicator of a shift away from maybe just the traditional telecom cable access type of setup.
I love that comparison, especially having been a mobile specialist back in my agency days. I see so many parallels. I really appreciated what Justin said about the TV being the homepage of the home. And I think you're right, Michael, when we look at consumer usage, a lot of brands, at least in my category, are now focused on the younger consumer. How do we drive adoption? How do we continue to drive usage? And we really do see this huge break-off between generations, I believe, especially when we think about the way that the device of the TV is used. For millennials, it's all streaming. It's all connected TV. When we start shifting even younger, I mean, the way that Gen Z is thinking about a TV, it has nothing to do with, our memories of linear TV at all. It's truly their homepage. Like, I really felt that was a great description of the way that the device is used in the home. So I don't know, I found that fascinating, and I love the parallel between this and mobile, a lot, 10 years ago.
Justin's eloquent, no doubt. So as far as how you guys have approached buying the connected TV medium, I'd love to hear a little bit about that. Like, have you looked kind of at publisher content first? Have you kind of looked at scale across various sources?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say we are very much in the experimenting phase. So we're very much testing and learning and trying to figure out what works for us. So we have been, I would say, more publisher focused, more thinking about aligning ourselves with the type of content that we want to be in, and more thinking about, targeting audiences, but very broad audiences, which isn't to say that that is the way of the future necessarily. I think I personally struggle a bit with the fragmentation of the landscape, and the need to, the way that connected TV is now purchased, it's so fragmented. It's hard to think about. I think we're on the precipice of possibility here. And we're all trying to kind of understand, for me at least, just because there is the capability to really granularly target, does that mean that that's the most effective way to use this capability? And I think, I always joke, if I were selling, eye drops, maybe, but I'm not. I'm selling confection, sweet snacking products. So I think we've been approaching it somewhat traditionally, in the sense of, this is still a broad reach medium. We still want to be places where our consumer are, and we want to be there frequently.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's interesting. It almost, I think the medium's kind of evolving from what was looked at as kind of a hardcore ad tech play. Let's target down to the most granular possible audience, with some sort of target in mind that may or may not be true, and all these things. I think it's changing a little bit in the sense of being looked at as a medium in a positive way, like linear, that can have mass reach, that can use targeting strategically, but not use targeting for the sake of targeting alone, right?
That's a great way to put it. Absolutely.
Which, I mean, it's fun when you're learning new technologies. You want to,
you want to use all the bells and whistles. You want to, be crazy with what you're doing. But sometimes, it's funny. I feel like we're in this resurgence of going back to the basics because of the loss of cookies, because of consumer trends, kind of going back to where they used to be, content being so important, advertising. I feel like we're back at, reach, frequency, and relevancy, which is kind of where we started a long time ago, before I was even in this industry.
Yeah, I hear you. As far as, non-ad supported content, when we spoke earlier, it was a pretty interesting topic. There's been the shift in consumer consumption, like you laid out, largely away from a traditional linear cable subscription to other forms. But of course, a big portion of that viewership is now against non-ad supported content on the likes of Netflix, HBO, et cetera. So how is that being dealt with, knowing kind of we're losing reach in maybe a couple different places?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of passion for this topic because I think it's really the future of our industry as a whole. And I think so for us, it really takes the form of product integrations. And that's all the way from the biggest, most splashy product integrations, that budgets can afford, all the way down to product integrations with influencers on social channels. And I think topical for CTV specifically, as we all know, only about 50% of the inventory is ad supported. So where does that leave brands, especially brands like mine, who have really moved completely away from linear TV? And I actually think it opens a lot of doors for how do we provide value to the consumer? How do we get relevant in their day-to-day? So we do everything from organic product integrations in streaming shows and movies, if you will, and paid integrations, and really feel strongly that that's sort of where we're going. I'm happy to share a really cool example that my team's been working on in partnership with our brand leads over on the Sweet Tarts side of the world. Sweet Tarts is one of our biggest and fastest growing confection brands. And they're all about multi-sensorial experiences and celebrating the multi-dimensionality that is in all of us as humans. So with their Be Both campaign and a partnership that we had with Viacom, we were able to integrate the Sweet Tarts Rainbow Ropes product into RuPaul's Drag Race. It's not out yet, so I won't give details about the integration itself, but I think that particular example for me is so kind of salient to this point of where the industry is going, because it really takes two equities that have a ton in common and builds them up together while we're making, really our product relevant with the consumers that we know enjoy it.
Got it. Yeah, I thought I think the product integration is such a powerful method of advertising, especially because you're not dealing with clutter. As long as it's done in an authentic way, of course. Right. But I think when we were talking, knowing like I used to be a marketer for Land Rover, I think the thing that aha moment for me was when we were doing integration work for some of the Bond films coming out, and you're thinking, why is Land Rover cool? Why is Aston Martin cool? Why are they looked at as luxury brands, right? It's Bond has a role in that for sure, right? So I think these sort of things are becoming quite interesting, and you're seeing the non-ad supported platforms starting to do more of this, at least as a marketer, you start kind of noticing.
I think it's a huge opportunity. I think it'll change the way that we think about buying as we start to, as we start to get more sort of comfortable in this new landscape of CTV.
Great. So one thing we spoke about a little bit before too was the frequency management on CTV, right? So knowing kind of the traditional way to buy it, right? So if we can call it that in a medium that's pretty new, was to do publisher direct deals, right? So with a series of publishers, each of which has a scale, with the hopes that these consumers who are not viewing linear are viewing on these platforms, right? But of course, when you work with a lot of partners who don't understand frequency across each other, you start running into a lot of the same problems you did with linear itself. Right? So I'd love to hear, anything you guys are doing currently to manage frequency, and what you might think the role of a TV manufacturer like ourselves or Roku or Samsung, et cetera, would do.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've highlighted what is probably one, if not one, the most or the biggest challenge. I think, we are still this sort of part of TV, despite being looking and quacking like a duck, it isn't linear TV, and there's a lot to figure out. And this is one of the things I would say we certainly haven't figured out. Right now, our frequency management is very manual. It's very much who's viewing what, and do we feel like we're getting broad enough reach across all of our buy. It's not taking advantage of the fact that it can be more automated. And I think, you and I were kind of geeking out a little bit about this unique position of OEMs in the marketplace, and kind of comparing it to the MVPDs of years of old, in the sense that there is a capability to provide a layer of frequency management at the device level. So, I mean, I think it's a huge opportunity, and I think, at least that I know of, it's not one that brand marketers have reliably cracked yet.
Yeah, and I like the MVPD comparison. I think one thing, as this company's evolved, I've learned more about is that, a TV manufacturer has quite a bit of power with publishers, right? Because of course, publishers rely on us to distribute their app, just like we would rely on publishers to help us with inventory access, right? So I see the role of us going forward, amongst other things, as a aggregator of content that can then apply data that allows you to manage frequency across multiple publishers, right? Versus individual publisher buys that don't have that connection. So that's kind of how I see the role. Just like a cable company, right? When you buy linear TV, you don't go out and buy each individual station in each individual DMA, because that would be crazy. You need an army of people. But we kind of can act as that intermediary in some ways, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting assertion, and I'm excited to see the industry continue to evolve, and excited to continue to think about what that means in terms of our buys, or what that could mean in terms of our buys. Could mean that they're very multi-layered. What we consider to be one channel could be kind of a couple in one.
Yeah. And I think, for all the limitations linear TV has, there definitely are some good things that are happening. And I'd love to ask you about, what in linear would you like to see come to the connected TV space?
Yeah. I think a few things. I think some are already there. And I think, again, I feel like because of the rapid change in consumer behavior that was 2020, a lot of the legacy, linear networks have really, we've just seen a step change in terms of how they're approaching. We've seen all these, Paramount Plus, et cetera, launch. We've really seen a big difference. So a lot of my wishes are starting to come true. I think the biggest thing for me, I'm excited for when we have rules of the road. And don't get me wrong, I feel like it's so fun, and I love kind of existing in these areas of our industry that are just kind of, just being shaped and participating in that shaping. For me, that's really fulfilling. But I also think, every conversation I have, I learn something new, which is great, but I also unlearn a few things. So I'm excited for when we kind of have a common vernacular and a common understanding of what works. And honestly, some really strong kind of case studies on measurement. How do we measure connected TV? How do we really take advantage of the digitization of the TV?
Yeah, I think it brings up a good point of, for the limitations Nielsen has, linear TV does have one thing provided by Nielsen that I think is quite powerful, which is a holistic cross-partner reach and frequency level, right? Sure, there might be accuracy issues at some point, but overall it's a standardized number buyers and sellers are using, something marketers can work with. I think that's a challenge I see right now in connected TV is there's some forms of that, but it doesn't have that standardization like linear.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So what about the other way? I know there's been talks about addressable, insertion into traditional linear. Is there anything from connected TV you think that could make linear a more attractive offering, maybe to a brand like yours?
Ooh, trick question, Michael. I think we're going through a period of change where we won't be talking about beyond linear for too much longer, at least for younger audiences. And that's kind of where I play. So I don't know if I have a great answer to that question.
Yeah, I guess that brings up a good point. In your case, it's really not about the medium and how it's bought or measured as much as just consumers and where they are. Is that kind of safe to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So would love to hear anything you're doing currently on the measurement topic to measure connected TV, maybe things you'd like to see to better measure connected TV.
Ooh, I mean, it's a bit tough right now. It's pretty fragmented. We really think about connected TV just like we think about all of our other kind of digital metrics, thinking about creative performance, thinking about, brand lift. We can do attribution studies. I think what I'm hungry for is really what you said about, kind of that common denominator that is Nielsen. The benefit of that being holistic. So you can look at a number from Nielsen and understand what your, total rating points were for a period of time, et cetera. I'm kind of hungry for some more unified measurement. And I don't know if we're going to totally get there, at least not in the near future. But I think that there are probably some really interesting things brewing. And so I'm hoping for more holistic look across channels, or a more holistic look in general, just across, connected TV buy or streaming buy.
Amen.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of there, and it's tough too when you're, being a marketer, when you're selling up, especially to an executive team who's very fluent in linear TV, and they say, "Okay, great. How do we measure it?" And you're like, "Ooh, well." And then, that becomes an entire conversation. So I really think that it will make my life certainly a lot easier when we can have a little bit more of a kind of a fluid, industry standard to lean on.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think what's interesting is there's tons of ways to measure it in very granular ways with individual partners or even groups of partners, but to do it across everything.
There's amazing things out there. The problem is just connecting them all.
Yep.
And how do you sort of individually look at value if it can't be necessarily crossed?
Absolutely. So would love to hear any areas of the industry that you're just currently learning a lot about, excited about, coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I think that consumer behavior is changing so rapidly that we're kind of, or, I'll speak for myself, I'm kind of just watching. I think, just like the rest of my colleagues, Gen Z is fascinating to me. The way that they're behaving is fascinating. The way that we're seeing a resurgence of long form content, but it's more user generated or creator generated is very interesting. I think that I'm really excited about the potential for things like live streams, going back to this usage of the device versus, thinking about TV as the content that's streamed on it, or, connected to from a linear perspective. I think that live streams are going to be very interesting. And this idea that we can experience things virtually through our TV is very interesting. But in general, I'm kind of just watching consumer behavior and then thinking about what implications that has on my brands.
It actually brings up an interesting point of the idea of appointment viewing versus just on-demand viewing. Like,
yeah, like I said, it's like we're going all the way back.
Right? Yeah,
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and the way that Gen Z is so comfortable going, I mean, I think those of us who didn't grow up necessarily with our face in a device, feel a little bit virtually exhausted, but I think our younger cohorts are really comfortable with this idea of seamlessly floating from physical to digital worlds, and the way that will change, TV viewership is very interesting to me.
For sure. And what about for 2022, whether it's from Ferrara or just the industry as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. From a Ferrara perspective, selfishly, I've been here a little over a year. I think we're just, we have just sort of built the car and it's about to get tested on the racetrack. And I am so excited. I have great peer partners here at Ferrara. I have great agency partners in Mindshare and in the other agencies we work with. So I just think it's going to be a really exciting year. If you and I have this conversation this time next year, Michael, I'm hopeful that there'll be a lot of really exciting things to share. And then, again, from an industry perspective, I really think we're kind of at a wait and see point. A lot of the stuff we talked about, I'm really excited about. I'm excited about the evolution of measurement. I'm excited about really kind of the maturation of connected TV. I think we've even just seen in the last year or so, just a rapid acceleration. Excited about some of the things we talked about as it relates to, how do we think about frequency management? How do we think about managing fragmentation? Do we have layers of buys where we sort of have what would equate to network TV versus cable TV? And we're kind of building this really interesting kind of consumer first video buy. So I think we're on the precipice of what's possible. And that to me is just the most exciting place to be.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's the last couple of years has been the first time in my career I've truly seen a viable alternative to move linear funds to other places at scale, right? It's a relatively new thing. I mean, in the past, you could have done it in incremental amounts over time slowly, and now that shift has been made a ton easier with a lot of the offerings in the market, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to be able to, I think connected TV for many years was really an extension of a linear buy. A lot of digital was seen as an extension of linear buy. We were not necessarily at this place where we can do what Ferrara is doing and say, you know what, our consumer's here, and so that's where we need to be, and go ahead and sort of start at the center with the consumer and buy accordingly.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Michael.
Appreciate it.
I'm back. Thank you both, Michael, Catherine. That was wonderful. Michael, did you have any questions in the Q&A?
Not seeing anything right now, but happy to answer anything that comes up.
Yeah, I didn't see any myself, and I want to take the opportunity to let you all know I have a 10-year-old and 12-year-old, and guilt is my friend. So I'm going to guilt all of you audience members into putting some thoughts into some questions for us. We're live. You have Catherine Berger live here from Ferrara today. Don't hesitate to ask your questions.
Justin, I definitely thought the 10 and 12-year-old plug was a ploy to get candy, of which I have access. So,
yeah, well, there might have been a little bit of that as well.
Happy to share the love.
It is definitely just after Halloween where that was.
The last thing you want to hear is the trigger.
I love the idea of precipice of possibility. I really think that's really fascinating. And I'm really glad you talked about that. And, the other thing I was thinking about when you talked about it was how CTV looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, right? But it's not really a duck. And I was thinking about that. It's really like a souped up, supercharged duck, right? Like, so below the surface, right? Like we talk about a duck kind of like looking very calm on the surface of the water and, paddling like furiously underneath. We got like a souped up V8 underneath underneath the water line.
I love analogies. I agree. It's interesting. If you want it to be a duck, it can be a duck. And I think a lot of us, myself included, have been using it like a duck to just continue with this duck swimming analogy. But I agree. I think what we're about to see is I don't know how to take the analogy further, but a supercharged V8 duck.
Supercharged V8 duck. Absolutely. Yeah, the opportunity is there, the precipice of possibility. Well, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time with speaking with us. Actually, here is a question that just in. I was about to let them go. Thank you so much. So there was a question, right? We're talking about CTV, we're talking about video and interactive capabilities. And so the question is, have you stepped into TikTok or Snapchat advertising? And this person I want to let you know, the comment is she's very excited, or he is very excited to hear you speaking. So,
that's very flattering. Thank you. And thanks for the question. Yeah, we have. I think, again, with the sort of grounding principle for my team as a whole being seeing things through the consumer's lens. If we weren't on TikTok and Snapchat, we would probably be missing a big opportunity. What I think is very interesting and topical as it relates to this conversation about connected TV is, it was all over the news. Netflix named TikTok as one of its main competitors. And when we start to see the behavior of a young audience, which is, again, very fluid between these platforms, they're not really seeing these as, it's sort of very similar behavior. And we're starting to see live streams from these platforms, social platforms. I think we're seeing almost a collapse of the media landscape in the way that consumers experience it, which I find to be just fascinating, especially when we think about how we show up as brands.
Yep. It's all attention, right? It's absolutely fascinating that way. Super. Well, thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Michael. Nice to see you guys here on Zoom again.
For having me.
Have a great day. Again, everyone who's tuned in, we're live here. Get yourselves a cup of coffee, especially if you're on the West Coast. If you're on the East Coast, grab yourself some lunch. And make sure that you ask us these questions. It's a great opportunity to speak to some of these folks. So we're moving on to our next speaker. We have, very excited to introduce, I believe it is Kari Marshall. Let me know if I got that wrong. Kari is Vice President of Media at T-Mobile and head of the T-Mobile media strategy designed to attract business decision makers and influencers from small businesses to large enterprises and engage with them. She integrates the T-Mobile media teams to leverage their strategies and content. And to talk with her today, I have the honor of introducing another of my colleagues, Susan Edmonds, Senior Director of Sales. Susan is on the West Coast. Susan, I hope you have some coffee because I think it's still your morning there, yes?
Yes, I have had a lot of cold brew already this morning.
Oh, excellent. Too cold here in New York for cold brew.
Yeah, I mean, Carrie and I both are on the West Coast, so there's no rest for the wicked for us, working all hours these days.
Indeed. Well, I will not delay your conversation any further then. Go for it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Justin. Hi, Carrie. How are you today?
Hi, good. How are you doing?
Good. It's good to see you. We're here at Brand Innovators. We're talking about linear TV. Do you want to just give a quick intro to some people that may not know who you are that are joining us today?
Sure. So Carrie Marshall, and I lead the media organization at T-Mobile. And that includes, a lot of the in-housing that we've been doing over the last few years with our programmatic and search and social teams. What's interesting about my team is, prior to COVID, we were 100% based in Bellevue here. And then after COVID, we happened to merge with Sprint. And, on the onset now, I have half of my team here, and we are entirely virtual team. Even though we're kind of returning back to the office, we'll always be virtual.
All right. That's good to know. I miss going up to the office and seeing all the faces. So, in the post-COVID world, everything is being done on Zoom. So thank you again for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So I'm Susan Edmonds. I'm Susan Edmonds. I'm with LG Ads. I have to admit, this is really a moment that's coming full circle for me. Not only am I a T-Mobile customer, but I actually started my career out on the linear side as a broadcast buyer. And I was actually on the agency team that launched T-Mobile into the US market. So now I'm on the other side in sales, working in connected TV for LG Ads. T-Mobile is actually one of our strategic partners. So if this is actually a really great moment for me, and thank you so much for joining us today. In regards to linear and streaming, out of curiosity, are you watching anything right now in the streaming world? And is there anything that you have a secret guilty pleasure of?
Well, I think I'm probably not the only one, but we just wrapped up Squid Games, which was my obsession for a while. And then, our go-to at night when I want to check out, because I also have 2 little kids and, life is always a little bit crazy. My guilty pleasure is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which is on repeat all the time, or just Impractical Jokers. It's nice to kind of end the night just with some comedy.
Definitely, and where you don't have to think about the storyline or the plot, or just have some great laughs and have it lighthearted.
That's right.
That's awesome. That's a great lineup. I am a huge fan right now of Yellowstone. It premiered a couple weeks ago. Last night we caught up on the first 3 episodes. So we were really excited for it to premiere back again. All right, so let's jump into this. So in regards to, linear TV and, how does it look like for your CTV strategy when you're tying in linear? I know T-Mobile is a huge broadcast linear advertiser, and when you're looking at the CTV strategy, how do you tie it in, and what's the vice versa, the comparison?
Yeah, I think that we've moved from thinking about CTV as its own thing, and really thinking about a holistic strategy that obviously starts with the consumer, and then it's about video, and video that's placed in some great content, and then backing out and figuring out, depending on the audience that you want to reach, what is the right mix and investment across linear, across CTV, and that kind of comes afterwards versus a starting point.
Okay. I know from an LG perspective, we're really looking at the household. So it sounds like that's what you're moving to, more of an audience first approach, and making sure you're hitting the audience regardless of if they're on linear or CTV.
That's right. And, that's our goal, at least, right? The way that we plan doesn't always mean that that's the way that we can buy, or the way that we can measure. And so trying to connect all of those kind of worlds and teams has been, difficult with the fragmentation that we see, and how, the consumer only sees the content and the ads that they're served, but we know behind the scenes, trying to plan to reach that one person is filled with complexities.
Yeah, I mean, as the consumers watching, they don't realize if they're watching CTV, a linear spot, they just know it's on the glass and the large screen in front of them, and we're serving messages to them, regardless if it's CTV, OTT, or linear.
Right. Yeah, we used to get, a few years ago, if I had, anyone here at T-Mobile ask me about, why a spot was run in a particular program, or did I see something? And I used to be able to get, pretty quick and direct answers. And now I have to pause and ask, where were you watching it? What platform did you watch it on? At what time? Like all these additional clarifying questions just to try to navigate what potential ads they saw.
Definitely. And when you're looking at the platform, it could even go further into, were you actually on a gaming platform, then watching through the connected device? It's very a complex area now. And I know that from an OEM perspective, our other competitors or other OEMs like a Samsung or Vizio are really trying to make it holistic and easier for brands to get into the market and reach it at a household level. With regards to, best practices and looking at when you guys are actually considering linear versus CTV, do you guys have a philosophy of like, how much is too much? Are you preferencing CTV over linear these days? With the upfront, we know it was a very challenging environment this year with, triple increases.
Yeah, I think that there's a whole host of things that go into answering that question. Like you said, there's a cost analysis. There's an inventory analysis. There is, how scalable. We're still a business that needs scale, and incremental reach is still valuable. And then, most important is, where's the consumer and how has consumer behavior changed over time? And then taking some risks and gambles of like, what do we project consumer behavior will be? Because obviously the upfronts isn't about next month or next quarter. We're trying to predict what it's going to be in the next 4 quarters. And so there's so many different data points that we leverage. We're still using some historical, mixed modeling. We look at predictions and getting our data and information from a whole bunch of sources. And that's kind of the the fun part is the creativity to kind of marry all the data to come up with your recommendation on how much CTV do you think you need and how much is too much. And then you have to place some bets at the end of the day.
What's one of the biggest bets that you're placing that consumers are going to go on in the next four quarters or a year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's still so much learning to be had in this space, right? There's measurement opportunities. There's probably consolidation in the future, or I hope that there's some consolidation in the future. And there's different partnerships that I think are just critical to form, like in the ad tech space, as you're thinking about how do I manage frequency when I have buys across, hundreds of different publishers. Like, managing frequency is a real issue because the consumer is experiencing our ads in a way that maybe is not so friendly, and maybe they're seeing our ad 5 times in a row. Our ability to execute flawlessly is at risk because of the fragmentation. So I think making sure that we're having the right conversations now of who to partner with in the ad tech space, both on how do we manage frequency, how do we measure better. And then obviously, and I think that we'll get to it a little bit, is, brand safety and fraud. And so those are the conversations that are critical just to get a good foundation. And then as you're thinking about how much you invest in, the CTV space across, various partners, you have a grounding to understand what's working or not.
Okay. In regards to managing frequency, back when I was a broadcast buyer, it was all about how many times you showed up in a program. From a T-Mobile perspective, what is your strategy to manage frequency, and how are you doing that from an ad tech perspective?
Yeah, we do it from an ad tech perspective. I think also I'm supporting a lot of different lines of businesses and going after various audiences. And that one consumer at the end of the day could actually fit within 3 or 4 different buckets of audiences. And so it's not just managing frequency within one campaign or within kind of one line of business. It's thinking about, from a household perspective, how to start building the right experience for that one household or that one, individual as much as we know about them. And so, but it's difficult. And, we have partners like the Trade Desk that I think are, helping us evaluate the space and doing frequency management, but there's only so much inventory going through the platform still, right? So you kind of do what you can with the ad tech partners that you have, but hopefully those will be more scalable in the future.
Okay. And then from measuring it, do you guys have your own T-Mobile modeling system for measuring reach and frequency across linear and CTV campaigns?
Yeah, we do look at that, and our media partner initiative is definitely helping us do that with their tools, and we have some internal tools of looking at measurement, but it's still, I would say, it's still in a nascent environment. Like, there's still, every partner that we go to has different nuances that you kind of have to accommodate to. And so that's where I think about more standardization to help us, because I can partner with, one and get it great, but if it only represents a small portion of the ecosystem, it doesn't really help me manage frequency. It just helps manage frequency within a platform.
Yes.
But it's not helping me manage it to the consumers that I'm trying to reach.
Definitely. When it comes to standardization and trying to bridge the gap, do you see anyone doing it or leading the way, maybe outside of T-Mobile, that is trying to do it, or is it still up in the air because it's such a new area or environment to go into? Yeah,
I mean, I believe it's really new. If there's people out there that feel like they're, have figured it out, I would love to talk to them. I think it's also a bit more challenging for, marketers that are still trying to get scale and are still mass in nature, right? I'm not just trying to target, 10 million people or, 50 million people. I'm trying to target everyone in the US at some point in time. Like, everyone is a potential customer for T-Mobile. And we already have 100 million customers of our own. And so scale is so critical for us. The opportunity of CTV and where our industry is going is kind of opposite of where and how we have won in the past, we have won by, basically buying in bulk, really efficient, leveraging spend, and going big. Now the opportunity has changed, and we need to figure out how to manipulate the marketplace in a new way. The brands and marketers that I think maybe have, I don't want to say easier time, but maybe it's less complex, is they have a very specific target to go after. They are maybe in the e-commerce space, like we are not, and have data signals to understand how those audiences are, how they're tying back to whatever their business outcome might be. And so I think that there's certain marketers that can navigate the space maybe a little bit easier than an advertiser that has been, a leader in investing in video for a long time. When you have that much volume, it's harder to manage frequency. It's harder to manage consumer journeys because it is so massive.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, multiple targets. We became a T-Mobile household because of the benefits and the services that you guys offered. And your audiences can fall into multiple buckets, and you guys are a large mass advertiser. When you're looking at extending, into incremental reach, how are you guys managing it? And is that, I'm assuming it's a key component to all your, activation campaigns, is getting that incrementality.
Yep, absolutely. And there is not a consumer out there that we don't want to reach. It's just making sure that we have the right message in front of them, or the right offer, or the right storytelling, the narrative. And so we use a lot of different partners. We have iSpot as a partner that helps us on the back end understand how our buy is, and the households and that we're reaching. We are doing more auditing to say, like, well, this is what we thought we would go buy, and this was our plan. How did it deliver? So again, it's marrying ad tech from a deployment standpoint of like how you're navigating and accessing the inventory, and then the back end, it's some measurement and auditing capabilities that you have to look at to see, this was my plan, this is how I bought. Did that actually happen? And if not, it's constantly kind of course correct and learning to get better. But we do look at incremental reach. It is important to us. And we have found that our strategy in the video space has had to evolve because it's queuing reach really fast over a weekend is very difficult to do today. And you can go big and spend a lot of money, but usually that means a lot of frequency on a smaller audience if you're not careful with how you're planning, but more importantly, how you're actually buying.
Okay, yeah, definitely. When reaching that audience and those consumers, as a mass advertiser across linear and CTV with T-Mobile, how important is tying in cross-screen from your CTV buys to those second screens where consumers are always on multiple devices while they're watching the large screen?
Yeah, I think that goes to the narrative that we're trying to say, and knowing that not every environment is, you're not able to communicate the same story within every environment. And it's trying to navigate, if we have, on the big screen, there's sight, sound, motion. We know that consumers are not 100%, attentive to whatever they're watching on the big screen. And they often have, one or two different devices also in front of them. So it's trying to make those connections. It's really thinking, again, going back to the audience of what they might be doing at what time of day or what day of week, to make sure that the storytelling is coinciding with the behaviors that consumers have evolved to. And, obviously the impact of the past, year and a half, behaviors have changed substantially, right? And I would argue that the multiple screens at the same time has increased even more. That people are doing a lot of things in their home besides just watching TV, whether that's CTV or linear.
Yeah, I know from my perspective, our habits have changed in our household. Beforehand, we were always on our mobile devices or iPads. In the past year, our TV has really become the main focal point and is the homepage of our household, because we're now spending more time watching the bigger screen. or streaming different shows, or actually getting the instant movie that should be out in the theaters, but now we can watch it on our household. Whereas if you told me a year ago that we'd be watching more time on our TV, I would have said you were crazy, because that's not how our habits are. But it's great to see that the big screen is kind of coming back and really making an impact for consumers. And they have multiple choices to watch their content from. One of the things you mentioned earlier, not just with reach and frequency, was really addressing fraud. And like, how does T-Mobile look at fraud in the CTV space, and what type of safeguards are you implementing to combat fraud?
Yeah, I think implementing the safeguards is, I would say, still fairly new territory. How we have safeguarded ourselves today has been more about ensuring where the inventory is coming from, right? And that goes back to partnerships and direct partnerships to align on the content and the programming that you're going to be in. And then, we're working close with IAS as they're rolling out more capabilities in the space. But again, still new, and we need to test into it. And then, there's always looking at different exclusion lists or inclusion lists. Again, managing content further upfront versus kind of letting it go wild, because that's where I think a lot more risk for fraud happens.
Okay, definitely. I mean, I know from an OEM perspective, like our company LG, we really believe that first party data is the key to preventing fraud. So we understand what's actually coming across on the screen. And so it's built into the screen, and our ACR data validates that. So it's not just a singular to LG, but it's across all the OEMs that are using their first party ACR data. That's really helping us combat fraud in the CTV space. In regards to, measurement and network guarantees around, demographic reach, what triggers and measurement techniques would you love to see in the connected TV, or vice versa in the linear be adopted to linear? Would you like to see, different, type of guarantees from a demographic perspective come into CTV? Or, going back to linear, should we move everything to like a P2 plus delivery or guarantees on GRPs?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And there's a lot of work in our industry to kind of all get on the same page, because what I want is not necessarily what another brand wants, and every publisher and every partner also wants something different. So therefore, we lack standardization and we don't move forward. And I think in order for us to get better, there has to be some gives and takes, and it might not be perfect for everyone, but we have to align on better standardization. We have to eliminate the fragmentation that we have today in order for us to have better measurement solutions. I can't have measurement solutions that are different depending on how I invest. Again, going back to, I want to understand the audience that I'm reaching, and did it work or not? And to have different methodologies across different platforms is not helping me understand the investment.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to have a generalized methodology from linear into CTV as an industry to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples across the board, and not just apples and oranges.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that, and this is an area that needs to advance is the measurement front, and having more automation around how do I optimize? Because it's one thing to say, maybe I go to P2 plus, and then on the back end, I need to, ensure that I'm able to optimize my buys against the outcomes that I'm seeing. Well, I don't always know if the inventory is going to be available for me to actually replicate what worked in the marketplace. And so it's a whole ecosystem that needs to evolve kind of in parallel path with the measurement. But you can have, even if you have the right measurement, if you don't have the ability to optimize your buy because the inventory isn't there and available for you to go and optimize into or out of, that limits your capabilities to kind of marry the two worlds together.
Okay, great. And looking ahead into 2022, and I know you're always thinking a couple quarters in advance, what excites you about going into next year? And can you share how you're going to be approaching the 2022 upfronts?
Great question. And to think about 22 upfronts is a little bit early for us. But I would say, the past couple of years have obviously been just a little bit chaotic. And we went through, 2020 with the merger happening at the same time with Sprint. And so it's been a little bit crazy, and consumer behavior drastically started to change. Like, it was always heading this way, right? That the trends were always saying like cord cutters and streaming services was going to be important. Like, we all knew that was coming. And then, the past year and a half when everyone was at home, it just it enhanced that even more. And it really put consumer behavior at the forefront of understanding how do we start manipulating our strategies differently to reach this audience. Now we're starting to see, different types of trends as, people are going back in the world. I went to the movie theaters for the first time last week. And as we start to learn and think about this new consumer behavior, again, projecting what it's going to be like into next year, the end of next year, is a challenge. I'm excited though, because I do think that it opens up so many different opportunities, and the sophistication in this space. A lot of people call it like extremely complex, and it is. To try to navigate and tell my leaders here in like 30 minutes what's going on is like impossible. But it's exciting, and I think that's why I've liked the media space so much, is it's constantly evolving. This wasn't even a conversation that we had at this scale and at this level a couple of years ago. And so to try to, look at consumer behavior of what it's been, anticipate where it's going, is a great challenge. And I love trying to navigate that space.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I can agree wholeheartedly, coming from a video background, that up until COVID, really changed how people were consuming their media. It was always the year of mobile, right? And now it really has become the year of CTV, getting those cord cutters. People are really moving, not just from watching, linear, but they are, watching on their large screen, getting it from OTT, getting it from CTV. So, the consumption habits have really changed, and it's been really exciting to see as marketers and advertisers adopt different avenues to actually reach their consumers, because it is a bit of a fragmented environment. In regards to like reaching consumers, I know one of the core pillars at T-Mobile is diversity, equality, and inclusion. Having worked with you guys in the past, I know it's really important internally and externally. Can you share how this might impact, your culture, your consumer base, marketing efforts around advanced TV?
Yeah, I would say, not, taking maybe a step back and not just advanced TV, but because to unpack what you said is quite a lot, right? There's this, past year plus has been a lot of conversations about people, right? Mm-hmm. And that continues. And I think that as a leader, I've never, and maybe I should have, but the amount of time our organization talks about our people has been amazing and a big change. And I think it's great. And I think that the conversations and awareness of the right kind of dialogue is necessary. And you think about diversity, and you think about, maybe your head was thinking about what diversity meant in the past, but it's so much more. And we think about even on the supply side of minority-owned publishers, and understanding and the reflection of why maybe they haven't been part of our conversations, and really partnering with making sure that we have the right media process for evaluating the publishers. Our system was broken, and awareness to that has been very kind of insightful to understand of, it was nothing intentfully that we were doing, but you just get moving so fast, you're not taking a step back and looking at your process, your decision making, and how you're going to market. And so, and also, like I said, so there's diversity in supply. We look at people in our team, And, again, half of my team isn't in Bellevue. We have people in our Reston office and in Kansas and in Texas and in California. Like, my team is spread everywhere. And I think that diversity of thought and diversity of kind of the talent that we're getting is also just critically important, which enhances our culture. And our culture will never be, what it was when we were just T-Mobile. But we're a new company also. Like, we merged with Sprint. We're a new company. Our culture has evolved tremendously. And it's exciting to see what we can get done now.
Fantastic. I like it. I think that with COVID, it's been being able to tap into people around the United States to be part of a team versus always in one general area has really given, marketers, companies really a diverse set of talent and tapping into the best talent, regardless if, they're in the state or the city or they're actually across country. So I think I applaud you guys for having a diverse team and being able to manage all those, the pieces of the puzzle together. I think we're going to wrap it up. We do have some questions coming in. One of the questions I have is, with so much focus on streaming TV today, how do you see that evolving going forward? Do you foresee any more in advanced TV?
Yeah, I think, and you kind of mentioned it earlier on, you never thought like the big screen would be kind of your source of entertainment that was always on. And I think that was true for a lot of households. But now as we evolve into kind of going back to work and traveling, and I have to make a plug, because what is going to change even further is now marrying like the year of the mobile with the year of advanced TV, because you can do it on the road, right? T-Mobile, if anyone missed the news yesterday, we announced that our ultra capacity, our 5G network, is nationwide, covering over 200 million people. Like, that is massive. Our competitors are still in pockets and arenas and little parks. Like, we have the scale now. And with 5G, you can take all of that content on the road with you. Like, I'm heading on a road trip over Thanksgiving. I literally use my phone to power my kids' iPads. They're streaming all the way down the coast. Like, the amount of TV and the volume of videos that are being consumed on our network are just going to explode with 5G. And now that we have the nationwide coverage, I think consumers are actually going to realize, like, they don't have to connect to Wi-Fi to stream when they're in a hotel. Like, they can just use their phone because it's 5G. It's fast. It's as fast as Wi-Fi. And now we're over 200 million pops. That will change consumer behavior.
Yeah, I mean, not to keep touting T-Mobile, but being a customer, I just got the new iPhone, so I am on the 5G network. I have noticed in the past week since I've owned the phone how much faster the service is. I too am about to go on a break in the next 2 days and take off for the weekend. And I've actually already downloaded some of the shows that I have been wanting to watch for the past 2 weeks, and I just was impressed how quickly it would have taken to download. Whereas I knew, and the reason why I pre-did it was I would have taken a whole 3 or 4 hours to get these, all this content onto my phone to download to make sure I had it. I was like, let's do it now while I'm thinking about it versus an hour before I leave for the, the plane. And I just was like amazed at how quickly it didn't take an hour. It was like minutes. Yeah. So it was pretty amazing. In regards to like the CTV space, I have one question coming in. What are you looking at from a KPI perspective, and how are you evaluating those CTV campaigns?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because there's a lot of different KPIs, and us as a brand, our business isn't in the digital space yet. We're still brick and mortar. Like, our transactions happen in our retail stores, and so when we look at the impact that our investments are making, we have some shorter term indicators that are, we leverage iSpot. We look at actions taken on our website that are correlated to transactions that happen in our store. So that is kind of like the primary KPI that we're looking at. But we also look at kind of historical modeling, which is more macro, right? And very historical, to start to see how different channels are impacting, contributing to our business. And I will say, for anyone that's still using mixed modeling, and we do, it's a great data point, even though it is historical. It's interesting to see how the model catches up over time. Before, it's always a look back. And even though the model was saying, like, don't invest in CTV in advance, we're like, well, of course we would. Like, consumer behavior is there. There's inventory there. The cost makes sense. And now our model got refreshed. And it's like, oh, you should go spend money here. We're like, yes, we should. So it's more of a verification of our strategy and a verification of kind of the kind of risk that we're willing to take of like, hey, we're going to follow consumer behavior. It's the right thing to do. And then it's like later validated by a very sophisticated model.
Yeah, that's impressive that, that you're leading the modeling based, or like you're leading the decision making from your gut based on what how consumers are consuming, and then the modeling comes back in and says you guys made the right decision. So I mean, it's we always want to have checks and balances, but I love the fact that you guys are taking those chances and saying, all right, the modeling may not say it right now because it doesn't have the right data, but our gut says this because we're seeing how consumers are actually, taking in the content, and we're going to lead with this as a first approach. So, and then you have the modeling, bridging the gap at the end. When it comes to, I've got a question from the crowd. When it comes to how does CTV work for your upper funnel and lower funnel tactics?
Yeah, it's both. And I think about it the same way as, we've already thought about linear TV. Linear TV played the role of upper funnel and lower funnel. It's all about just reaching the right audience. And, we leverage TV because it's a vehicle to get, mass reach, and as a mass brand, like that's what we need. I think that, CTV provides different opportunities to obviously segment and be more strategic about who you're talking to with what message. But I think it has the opportunity to play at all stages of the funnel. And we do use it for all stages of the funnel. What might change is the content that we're in, the flighting strategy that we deploy, the pressure that we think is required, and the measurement in the back end. But I think it has the opportunity to play at all parts of the funnel.
Okay. And then speaking of measurement on the back end, how do you manage working with multiple streamers when we know that there's duplication that exists?
Yes,
I'm hitting you with all the tough questions.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like I said, we use, partners like the Trade Desk to help us kind of consolidate our view. But it's lacking the holistic picture. There's still opportunity to funnel more inventory through the platform to manage that. But it's still an area that we're testing and learning in. And there's only so much I think that we can do on the brand side. I think until our industry has more consolidation on the publisher side and on the platform side and OEM side, like more standardization is going to allow us to get better at understanding our investments.
Definitely. I know from an OEM perspective, this is what's really important to us, is making sure that we can actually drive incremental reach and not have the duplication. So from every OEM, they have their own first party ACR. So we're actually able to see what comes on the glass and see, if the user's already been exposed to your message, to limit the duplication and get that incrementality and drive new viewership on a mass reach perspective. I think there's some more questions coming in. We got a lot of questions this round. Hey. Does your OEM strategy, does your OEM strategy include leveraging ACR data to suppress certain audiences to help minimize duplication? I'm not writing these. These are anonymous.
So, I mean, as you know, and feel free to jump in. I mean, ACR technology is extremely beneficial to understand that overlap. I think that it's still difficult to measure the overlap across all devices in the household, because one OEM doesn't mean that they're the only OEM in that household, right? And so there's still, like I said, there's still pockets of opportunity to understand at the OEM level how to measure incrementality, and that's very beneficial. But it doesn't necessarily mean that household has been got incremental reach to that household.
Definitely. That is true. I will say, being an OEM, we know there's multiple TVs in the household, but one of the things that we have seen is the majority of time spent is going to be usually on the largest screen. So typically households are either an LG, Samsung, Vizio, or some of the other partners. And I know that we're all trying to do the best that we can to make sure that we're leveraging our ACR data. But we all have our own type of connectivity to reach the extended audience within the household. So that's one of the things I know that the IAB is looking to standardize as well. One of the questions I'm getting is, how are you approaching audiences when buying linear and CTV? I know that you're a mass, you guys are buying in bulk. It's, mass audience approach. You still have 200 million people in the US that you can drive over to T-Mobile to be subscribers. So how do you approach it, especially when you have multiple targets and multiple business lines? Sorry, yes. Very complex question.
Well, welcome to my world. And we have, we have an audience-based strategy. We also have a content strategy, and we can't forget that content is still extremely valuable to think about. Obviously, you want to make sure that you have the right content to reach your audiences, and that's why we always start with audiences. But it's also important to understand, which I'm excited about. I think that there's going to probably be amazing content that's been in the pipeline and in the making that's going to be released to get those eyeballs against. But it's a balance, right? And as we look at managing the overall strategy of reaching our audiences and how that changes maybe even over the course of time based on seasonality, prioritization of what our business, we balance kind of the mass reach, and we use audience data in a variety of ways, right? It might not be for informing every single investment in the video space, but as we lean into sponsorships, or where do we want to double down? Where do we want to have greater share of voice? How do we want to partner? That's where, insights of your audience are extremely valuable when you understand what is the passion points of those people that you're trying to reach. And it's not just a spot buy. But I will say in the linear space, it's still a little bit, even though your insights might be against a particular audience, the transactional side is still a demo base buy. You're still reaching everyone, right? And so there's, the impact that your audience strategy can have in the linear space is just not as sophisticated. The impact that your audience strategy can have in the advanced TV space is very sophisticated. And so I think that's where, because there is so much opportunity, there is a lot more discussion needed of how does your audience-based strategy in this advanced TV world, how is it performing? And that's when you go back to what ad tech are you using? What measurement capabilities do you have? Is there better consolidation and less fragmentation that can happen in the marketplace so we can actually take advantage of this world that I think is extremely powerful and has a huge opportunity to be the investment that's going to contribute the most to our business. It will scale, but as it scales, the sophistication needs to come along, and all of those things that we talked in the past half hour have to happen, right? Make sure that we have ability to minimize fraud, and there's brand safety. All those things that maybe the digital space is more advanced in, we need to carry that through into the advanced TV space.
Okay, and then I have one last question before we wrap it up. When you're viewing reach extension from a linear and CTV buy, are you looking to reinforce messaging throughout the customer journey? And if you are, is it both, or are you making a distinction, from linear to CTV, vice versa?
It's both. On our postpaid business, which is the mass, it's about reach extension, right? We're going after everyone. As we talk about our network and talk about our brand, that's about reaching everyone. As we look at other parts of our business that maybe we're going after a business decision maker or a younger audience that has more of a geographical skew, those are times where we use advanced TV specifically as an awareness driver to reach that audience. And so it does, again, going back to, depends on what you're kind of trying to accomplish, the scale that you need and the audience that you're reaching. We use it both ways.
Okay, and it looks like one more question came in. We have a little bit of less than a minute. So let's see. They want to know, how does creative play in your strategy? Are you measuring creative efficiency beyond pre-testing? If so, how does that impact your media strategy as you tackle cross screen?
Creative is like, we could spend another half hour on this, because as the TV space evolves and we get very, it's more sophisticated, we have to bring the creative partners along. Mm-hmm. We have to, like my counterpart internally that's developing all of our TV content, like she has to be educated as much as I am to some degree on what the opportunity is, because it impacts production costs. It impacts the amount of content required, or the opportunity for additional content, especially as you get into the addressable TV space. Like that is a big conversation that we can't forget as media leaders, that we have to lead kind of the marketing organization to take advantage of the space. It's not just a media buy and we're going to be successful navigating. We're not going to just reach the right audience and be successful. You have to bring along the creative partners in this world in order to really take advantage of it.
Great. Thank you so much, Carrie. Hi, Justin.
Hey, Susan. Hey, Carrie. That was amazing. Carrie, you're clearly so sophisticated already in this space, and I cannot thank you enough for sharing all of those insights with our audience and with Susan. I know it's extremely valuable for them, and we know on our end how much education needs to be done in the marketplace, and we're working to kind of bring everyone along and get them up to speed to where you are. I have to say, with your measurement comments, I feel very seen as the research guy. And we are definitely working on that day and night. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Carrie.
So our third set of speakers, I'll be coming onto the virtual stage right now. I'm happy to introduce Taylor Burns, who is Vice President, Media and Marketing Tech at Liberty Mutual. Taylor is responsible for driving profitable business growth across all media investments and driving marketing technology to power the strategies, insights, and execution of Liberty Mutual. Please welcome Taylor Burns. And along with Taylor, I'm very pleased to introduce my colleague, Reed Culligan, Senior AE of Sales here at LG Ads. Hi, Taylor. I see you there. I see Reed coming up on the screen now. How are you, Taylor?
Hey, Justin. Glad to be here. Good to see you, Reed.
Your
good to see you, Taylor.
Is fantastic, Taylor. What is that fantastic virtual background?
My home office ever since we started going virtual. It's the back porch, which
IRL is fantastic.
The scenery is great. The heating, yeah.
Well, for a little bit longer, you can do it at least, right?
Exactly.
Gentlemen, I can't wait to see how you add to the day so far. Take care. Enjoy.
Taylor, good to see you. And I'm glad the background came through. I was wondering if you're going to throw up the brand innovators or the good background. So I'm happy to see it here.
I figured I'd stick with it.
Yeah, stick with what's working. So good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Reed Culligan. I am the Senior Account Executive over at LG Ads. Based in New York City, there's still a few of us here this day and age. And I work on the East Coast team. And with me today is Taylor Burns, Vice President of Media and Marketing Tech. Taylor, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Brand Innovators, for throwing on just another wonderful event. So we have about 40 minutes today. Taylor and I have a pretty jam-packed schedule, a lot of questions, lots to discuss here. So Taylor, why don't we just kind of jump right into it? Why don't you just discuss your roles, your responsibilities within the team, but also how your team is structured, right? We understand that there's a lot of moving pieces here, maybe how one plays into the other for that larger strategy in terms of investment and planning and everything else.
Yeah, awesome. Glad to. So my team is focused on all things media. How do we bring our brand message out to consumers and effectively drive them to become our customers? And so we structure things across the different media verticals. So I have a direct that manages search, direct that manages aggregators, a direct that manages our mail and email acquisition focused, and another direct focus on our brand media, which spans everything from television to display. And then I have a fifth direct that focuses on the marketing technology and ad tech that powers like solutions across all of those tactics. And we put that out separate. So that role is specifically like cross-functional. It actually spans beyond just our media capabilities to power additional customer experiences.
That's great. And quick question on that, if you could say which team is kind of growing exponentially, if you could see kind of from now and then into the future?
It depends on the year. And so we pride ourselves on being fluid. And so there is no like fiefdoms. We don't set a plan and say, this is going to be the budget. We look for opportunities and we celebrate like when people are able to find areas to grow efficiently. And also we celebrate when people realize that there's a bigger opportunity outside their space. And so we try to make it, we try to celebrate also when we do have places that shrink. In the current environment, we are heavily pushing our brand. Like it's super important to make sure that that we continue to grow that top awareness within audiences. And so it has been a place where we've always invested and continue to double down in that space.
That's great. I love to hear it. And you've spent 11 years plus at Liberty Mutual. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about your personal journey, but also how Liberty Mutual has evolved over the 11 years?
I know when you say 11 years, it makes me realize how long it's been, but it's been a fun
I love
ride.
it.
And so I actually joined the company not through our marketing organization. I came in more of a consulting role. And so I worked on strategic projects across the organization and distribution in our product group, a little bit in our more technical like IT functions. And then I found the right path over to marketing. And I've been there for the past a little 8+ years. And my journey in marketing has kind of been, I guess, similar to our company's journey. Obviously, Liberty Mutual has been around for a long time. We're a 100+ year old company. But when I joined the marketing group, we were still we outsourced a lot. And so we relied on external agencies and partners to do a lot of our media, our creative, our analytics and measurements. And starting back then, we started on our journey to say, what should we do in-house? And so it's not everything. Like you have agencies that are experts for that part. So we said, where does it make sense? Where do we think we get a competitive advantage or an efficiency from having that operation in-house? So over the time, we brought things in-house. Data and analytics, like first we brought in, you have to be close to that to understand like where your media buys are making sense and to have the business knowledge to be able to like inform even the models that are powering those decisions. Second was around digital, started lower funnel with search and then moved up as we went, where we really found the proximity to the business and like the evolving understanding of who our customers are became really important to be close to the people executing those buys in terms of how we're reaching those folks. And it's an evolving process where we go through and we constantly work to say what makes sense to rely on external partners who are experts in their space and what makes sense to continue to build out that expertise in-house.
No, that's great. I mean, I think the advantages there is obviously, being able to control the brand messaging and everything else by bringing it in-house and also relying on other partners, right? There's experience all throughout the industry and, times are changing almost every single day. There's new ad tech, there's new data possibilities. So it's always good just to kind of partner up with different players and just kind of see how they help push your KPIs.
And also, I will also insurance is complex. And so understanding who our customers are, like it's hard to build that up. And we're all still learning about it, even for those of us that sit inside the walls of the company. And so being able to build on that, empower like media and marketers that they don't have to be like actuarial experts, but an understanding of the business becomes really powerful in making sophisticated media decisions.
And on that, how do you learn, right? What's your process of understanding and if something new comes about, what's your kind of process aside from just reading, just talking to a lot of partners and just, deep dives?
I think it depends. I guess I sit in like the juncture where I have to lean in both internally and externally. As we all know, like media is an ever-changing world. So we work with our agency partners, we work with our media partners to help keep us informed of what is changing, but it's also important to understand like what's changing in our internal operations. And like that becomes equally as challenging to be able to go in and lean into the changes in our distribution network. What are we doing to change our online sales environment? What are we doing as a company to put out more like advanced products that fit the consumers better, but also change our appetite on who we want to target? And so it becomes, you can't go deep on everywhere, but lots of conversations to figure out and make the right connections across the teams to make sure the right folks are collaborating.
Yep. Becomes a pretty complicated industry pretty quickly, especially this day and age. So obviously COVID-19 pandemic has put a lot of strain, in the economy in terms of behavior. Insurance is, as we just mentioned, very, very complex, very competitive, right? So can you talk just maybe holistically about the biggest obstacles, facing the insurance business right now? Obviously, driving behavior has totally changed. And then maybe, how you're kind of moving where the puck will be and saying, hey, we understand this today. How do we hedge against this in the future? But how are we also going to make sure, that sales are strong and that our partners are giving us the best opportunity?
Yeah. And so, I'm sure we've all felt the changes over the past year and a half, where we've seen in our own lives, like things change, your driving habits, your commuting habits, like where you work. And then we're in the business of like predicting the future. So we can look back and say what happened, but I don't think anyone would say that the past year and a half has been exactly predictive of the next year and a half. Like we are going to see difference. And so that's a challenge where we say we want to understand how much people are driving and how do we expect them? Where do we go through so that we can offer our customers and our prospective customers the most competitive price that they can get? And so like that is a challenge that we see. We also see differences out there that impact our business in terms of the supply chain. Like we all heard of the chip shortage, and that means less people are able to buy new cars. That usually sparks an insurance shopping decision. But even little things like the used car parts. If anyone has a used car out there, like now is probably a good time to sell if you don't need it, because with the limitations on new cars, we've seen the prices for used cars go up substantially. And for us in the business, we protect our clients. And so if they get in an accident, it's not their problem that a new car is more expensive. We want to make them whole. And so we have to account for that in our business.
And how do you think that plays into, your creative messaging and just in terms of overall strategy, right? Understanding that, auto is it's still a strong focus, but understanding that the market's totally changed. And now you're having to focus in on, more home. Can you talk about, how that affects your media modeling and how you're trying to move forward from that?
I think it obviously there is like a dynamic where we are a multi-line carrier. We want to fit all of the insurance, like all of our clientele's need, and that's a benefit versus some competitors that focus more solely on the auto line, or at least more dominant. But also like our value prop is lived and felt within. Like we customize your coverage so you only pay for what you need. And so like our sales process is built around understanding how that like person's insurable like life is changing. What are their future needs? How has that changed over time? And so like our value prop that we have had and that we continue to deliver continues to be really relevant in the current dynamic environment.
Yep. No, I totally agree. It's a very diversified business you all have. So when one might falter, you have other ways to pick it up, which I think is vastly important. I think and a big learning that we've all discovered here. In terms of people, bandwidth, right? People are emailing you all the time, trying to ask for meetings. How have you and your team adjusted to kind of this work-life balance, but also trying to stay ahead of the market, trying to understand what's going on? Can you talk a little bit about how you might have tweaked a little bit internally to make sure that, your people are not spending tons of time, hours and hours and hours on maybe some tasks that are less important and focusing on the road ahead?
Yeah, I'd say we've discovered over the pandemic and how effective work from home can be. I think people can be really productive, and we have technologies like this that can allow interactions. And we've seen how that played out, where we saw especially people within their network of who they need to work with being super effective, even in a fully virtual remote state. But we have noticed also that there can be a drift. And so you get less of those interactions outside of the folks that you need to do your core work. So how often will the folks doing search interact with the folks that are working on our YouTube campaigns? That starts to drift. And those connections also produce valuable insights over time. And so we've been thoughtful, and also just the broad connections where people are focused on their day-to-day and don't get the full connection to how we are running as a business. So we've tackled kind of both those things independently. One, we've had a structured approach to more cross-functional, smaller meetings where you put people together that are outside of their core domain so that they can build that interconnectivity and hopefully spark some good ideas. But even if they don't, just having that connectivity is valuable, where they can see folks outside of just folks that work on a day-to-day basis. The second is like connectivity to the broader business. I used to have like a smaller meeting with my leadership team to go over like our monthly business results. We broadened that to everyone involved in media. It's optional, come in, but that way they can join in. If they have insights, they can, but if not, they can have that connectivity to the work that we're doing and how it's rolling up to the bigger picture. We've gotten really good feedback for those things. They hit various purposes, but I think it's both play an important part.
Yeah, and I think, oh, go ahead.
I would say your last question around time. I know we've chatted before, like people's time is like their most valuable asset. We talk about budget, like we want to spend our budget in the most intelligent way possible, but people only have so much time, and we're all trying to strike like the right work home balance. And so that's where we've been really focused on making sure that we don't do meeting overload, that we prioritize the work that'll make the biggest differentiator, and that folks are really paying attention to the things that will move the needle, and we try to remove the distractions.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. And I think for, us and all the publishers out there, I think it's about talking to the right people and really getting to the value proposition, right? It's basically getting to the point and kind of have everything tied up. RFPs, RFIs are all focused in on, multiple strategies and how they ultimately play and, to basically, moving forward, moving products. So with that understanding, there's a lot of moving pieces within the business, understanding that, we're here to talk about beyond linear and streaming is a huge focus. Can you talk to us just, in the last year or two, how your media strategy has changed, and then looking forward to the next year, 2 years, 5 years out, how have you all pivoted? You obviously are a very, very large linear upfront player, strong digital player, but as we move into the streaming world, tell us your thought, how you're planning out, most importantly, what you value as success, right? Because there's a lot of metrics out there. Delivery is one of them, but it's also just, understanding of how you move forward and how you're evaluating partners.
Yeah, so I'll start with like the end goal. Like the end goal is like we deploy our media to drive the most like profitable new business customers into our funnels. And so we want to do that. And that's like, how do they convert? And then we want to have customers stick around for a long lifetime. And so the goal is to use those dollars in the most impactful way to bring people to our company. How we do that varies. There's a lot of like indicators that lead up to that end result. And so we go through, we look at like what the cost per quote is, what the delivery is, what the reach is, what the incremental reach is, what the incremental frequency is. Like there's a lot of like what the audience quality, the audience segments are within each media partner. So there's a lot of like underlying things that we look at that we either can stack up or that we know are directional indicators of like that end value chain. But at the end of the day, we have like a budget that we're deploying, and our goal is to create like the most value for the org in that. And the value for the org is bringing customers like to the front door.
Can you talk a little bit about
front door?
Yeah, I've got multiple, virtual front doors this day and age. Every minute's a Zoom meeting. Can you talk a little bit about, consumer behavior and how that's changed in the insurance world, and how obviously you want to employ the largest net to get them in your front door. But can you talk a little bit about how marketers would be able to reach your exact audience, given that, consumption inside of insurance and outside of insurance has just fully changed?
Yeah, we've seen like probably the biggest consumption shifts in the video space with like the increase in streaming consumption. So it's an area that we have been in for years and focused on testing. And I think we're glad to reap the benefits of that, because as we saw like the trend increase over the past year and a half, we felt comfortable with allowing our investments to shift where we saw the audience, because we had a structured approach prior to that, saying like, how do we go through, how do we measure the value, how do we look at the audience? And I say that like it's not static, it's constantly changing. Like our learnings from a year and a half ago, like they're good, but as you well know, this space is rapidly changing. And so the fundamentals are the same, but how that is being received out in the market and how consumers are tapping into the ever-changing world of content that can appear on their screens, like it's our collective challenge to try to stay ahead of that and understand where it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes total sense. And like we said before, you guys are a very diversified brand and always looking ahead, which it seems like you guys are always kind of one step ahead of the curve and moving into new territory.
And we've seen also the change in how consumers want to interact with us. Like as they've gone through, we've seen an increase in digital first. Like they want to come through, and then we've also seen an increase in like SMS adoption, and so our goal is to be where customers want to be, to interact and make it easy for them. If they want a solely online experience, like we want to provide that in the easiest way so that they can like secure their policy or service their policy in the form that works for them.
Yep. No, it's about how brands interact with your brand, right? And having that personal touch. I think customer service, personal touch, making sure that they feel loved and appreciated. And, you get to control the experience there. And I think one other aspect too, in terms of the shifting world, is incremental reach, right? It's obviously, we understand the linear marketplace has its challenges with, bottom line, subscribers and that, the shift to streaming. How are you kind of positioning incremental reach as you move forward?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's hugely important. We're a mass reach brand. Like we want to go out there, and if we have blind spots, we want to be able to fill them in. And so that becomes the challenge to say, like, it's not that linear is gone, but it is smaller than it used to be. And so we are all over saying, how do we react to that? How do we make sure we're finding that audience? Who is that audience, and how can we most effectively reach them in the environments where they're consuming media, particularly video? We tend to focus on video because it allows us the latitude to get our brand message across and really make an impact on consumers.
Yep, no, that makes absolute sense. And where would you kind of put, connected TV within your funnel, right? Obviously it changes, depending on your target, but if you could kind of just look at it holistically, where would you place it within your strategy?
So it is predominantly focused on generating awareness. You want to be top of mind with consumers. And so, but I would say with our presence, it's not about introducing them, it's staying constantly top of mind. And that's where we want our video and connected TV assets to work, where we're reminding folks on a continual basis of our value proposition, so that when life happens, when something sparks that insurance shopping moment, like we're already there. We've been in front of them through the content that they're consuming, and we're top of mind, so they think to come to us to get a quote.
And being that, cost per quote is arguably your largest KPI, right? That's kind of what you're looking for. How are you optimizing, to make sure that you're getting the most bang for your buck on every single dollar spent?
So, I mean, I guess I will say we do look at cost per quote. At the end of the day, we care if that customer buys a policy, but we tend to go up on cost per quote, just especially as an indicator across media, because you get like a lot of volume there. But we are always focused on measurement. Measurement was never easy, and even with the increasing technology availability, it still becomes like an ongoing challenge. And so we don't rely on one source of measurement. We do our own media mix modeling. We do people-based measurement tests. We do incremental reach tests. We try to focus on a variety of things so that we can triangulate an answer to be able to look back and say we feel comfortable with this investment is returning where it needs to be.
And aside from, like we said, cost per quote, but how are you evaluating, all your KPIs in terms of, can you talk to us about research studies that you're doing? Like, what do you look at that you can definitively say, you know what, I believe that this moved the needle, this was a great investment? What can you talk to us a little bit maybe about partners that you're partnering up with, or just like certain aspects of research that you say, what, definitively, I feel very good about this. This is where we want to move forward.
So, I mean, there's things what you can do to measure, and there's things that you can do at scale. At the end of the day, incremental sales are going to be what moves the needle. But I'm not like foolish enough to say that each type of media is going to work in the same way. It's if you're doing search, you get sales that day. You're doing video, you're not going to get sales that same day. So our challenge is to control for the differences in like the level of impact that a piece of media will have on that end outcome, which our end outcome is we spend that to drive prospects to us to become our customers. And so how we approach that, I think some of the ways that we love are when we can do like test control, based on anonymized data or first party data, because then you can go through, and if you do it correctly, you can truly measure the incremental impact of a media investment on our operation.
And on that, how are you kind of working with your first party, third party data? And then also in terms of, are you partnering with any kind of new data technology partners that really helps you kind of figure out your media strategy and make sure that, again, that you're kind of getting the most value for your media?
Yeah, so actually, this past year, we've set up a CDP internally to allow us to take advantage. Like as an insurance company, we collect a ton of first-party data. And so by, I guess, and I don't want to say that we're like at the end stage of that, if we're somewhere in the middle of that process, but it allows us to take advantage of that first-party data in an environment where cookies are becoming less and less reliable.
And in terms of, so you're saying it's a little bit of a work in progress. It's towards the end on that stage. How do you envision, using that first party data with partners? What would you like to see in terms of, are you kind of looking for them to ingest it and then they say, hey, match my audience? Or are you trying to get very granular? Kind of what's your goal there?
It's TBD. It's where we can make the most value. And so we don't want to, I guess it depends on what the partner is and where it sits in like the funnel and where we can get the value from it. I guess we take our media as an approach. Like sometimes you have sledgehammers, sometimes you have like carpentry hammers, sometimes you have a scalpel. And like you don't want to use a scalpel for a sledgehammer's job. You don't want to use a sledgehammer for a scalpel's job. And so we go through, and the idea is it doesn't all have to work. We have to figure out what it is and what we can use to make the most value. And I think what we have to be cautious of is taking first party data and inserting it too much into a mass reach vehicle when it's not what it's meant to be. But if you can use that to work around the edges, or you can use that to heavy up on a truly valuable audience, like that's where you can unlock a lot of power.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of partners onboarding their first party data, and I think that's a huge benefit of the data technology world this day and age, is that especially in the LG world where we can import it and then we can find mass scale, mass reach within it, and then again we can move across the funnel, and then it's not just CTV video, but then you can kind of complete your mobile strategy as well, right? So you can kind of move further down the funnel.
Exactly. Figuring out where it's worth it to interconnect all those things, or where it's worth it to heavy up. And sometimes it's everywhere, sometimes it's a component, but I think it all has the potential to make all of our buys more sophisticated.
Yeah, and I think that's the name of the game, is right? Is you guys are obviously playing in the mass reach, but then as soon as you're kind of continuously finding a customer throughout the funnel, you want to make sure that they're being followed up, with desktop, mobile, tablet, understanding they can drive to site. So in terms of very competitive insurance world, how are you sticking out, right? It's very fragmented, content on every screen. Consumers are watching content on every single screen. What are you doing to stick out in the very competitive space?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess hopefully we've had them out for a few years, but our brand ambassadors, Limu and Doug, do a great job of pushing out our brand awareness and being highly recognizable within the category, despite the fact that they're still relatively new. They've only been around for 2 years. It feels like longer, but actually they're relative newcomers on the, I guess, the brand ambassadors.
I love them. I laugh every time.
I saw there was an SNL skit where they made I guess a fake Doug made an appearance this weekend with some other commercial actors, and I think that picks up the impact that they are having out there, just in terms of their impact on like pop culture seeping in. But I think you combine that with our brand message. We customize your coverage so you only pay for what you need. We're not trying to give you the cheapest policy. We're trying to give you the best price, most competitive policy to protect like the assets you've earned. And I mean, these are important things. They're people's cars, homes. They want to have the right coverage, and we want to give them the most competitive price. And so we are consistent in putting out that message across all of our campaigns. And then the other thing that I will think that's like, I guess maybe it should be well noticed, but the importance of audio in all this, and the importance of audio and video. Like, I'm sure you've all heard our jingle out there. And like, we think of video as a very visual like aspect, and it is, but the audio components are hugely important in this distracted world. And so we have that out there where people are multitasking, and if they aren't paying full attention, we still are able to grab them in with that Liberty jingle, and it drives that like that recognition like subconsciously into their mind.
That's makes sense. I mean, I love the commercials, and I was exploring maybe a potential Halloween costume at a certain point in time. So it might be next year. I'll send you a picture of it. Yeah, maybe you guys have like a costume that you can send my way, and I'll put it on.
Exactly. Maybe we can work something out.
Exactly. I'll be the emo. It's fine. Yeah, it's cool. In terms of 2022, tell us what excites you, right? What are you most excited about? What are you kind of seeing in the marketplace that you're looking at and you're saying, you know what, this could have a lot of potential?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the video like landscape is exploding in terms of opportunities, and like that becomes like really exciting to be able to dive in and say what matters, but also really complex in terms of making sure you don't get distracted on the wrong things. Back to your early point, like how do you make sure you test the right things? How do you know that they're working, and how do you do that with I'll say the right, I don't want to say minimal effort, but the right amount of effort versus the opportunity. And so I'd say that and there's like increased data, increased technology to be able to stitch all these things together. And so it's like my fear and my excitement all at once, because there's so much opportunity to do great work and to make like our media dollars work harder. But there's also opportunity to increase the complexity and the workload on the folks. And we want them to focus on the things that can produce the most value and not be overwhelmed or distracted by too much work.
Makes sense. Makes total sense. So we have about 10 minutes left. I'm being inundated with a bunch of great questions here. So I think we might jump into a few of them. The first is, does your OEM strategy include leveraging ACR data to suppress certain audiences to help minimize duplication? Plays right into my world. So
yeah, so we do roll that out, and I think ideally, it's not just, there is like some suppressing, but it's also understanding that to control like the ad experience. Like, how do you give them the right amount? Like, you don't want to just frequency cap, but you want to understand what they're viewing, and are we able to deliver the right additional ad experiences to drive them to the optimal decision point? And then I know I topped on like the first, like it's easy in theory. The reality is challenging when you get into like, what are your blind spots? What aren't your blind spots? And that goes like beyond even just the ACR device versus the holistic media campaigns, where we also have blind spots.
Yep. No, I mean, the capabilities are endless. Obviously, that's what, we do at LG Ads over here is, looking at ACR data, understanding, who's been non-exposed, but also more importantly, who's been underexposed, right? Understanding that Liberty Mutual frequency is a large part of your strategy, right? One ad doesn't really do anything. It's making sure that, somebody's been exposed the right amount of times. And again, across different platforms, right? And the ability to control how many you've seen on CTV video, then followed up on cross device is obviously important, and ACR allows that.
Exactly. We don't want people to see 0 Limu and Doug ads, but we don't want them seeing 1 either. Like, I don't want to deny that from the audience.
We don't want that. I want to see as many as humanly possible. That's the name of the game, right? I got to perfect that costume.
Exactly.
Second question from anonymous attendee. What role does creative play in your strategy? Are you measuring creative efficiency beyond pre-testing? If so, how does that impact your media strategy as you tackle cross-screen? Lot to digest there.
Yep. So my team works heavily with our creative counterparts in terms of what creative they're developing and how it's performing on air, as well as like effectively aligning our media strategies with making sure that our production timelines and content is aligned. But we do have an extensive pre-market testing process to make sure that we aren't making ads that we don't think will work. And so we try, that is a goal, because once producing ads is expensive. And so if you don't get that right out of the gate, like that's a problem. We also focus on in-market reads across, it varies across the different platforms. We have some stuff that we manage entirely in-house, and we also look at some syndicated data to understand like directionally, where should we heavy up and like where should we pull back. But the idea is they should be directional changes at that point, because we've put in through a process to make sure that we're not putting like what we view as misses out onto the air.
Yep. Nope. Makes sense. It's about finding the right creative at the right platform and making sure that it affects well. And it's most importantly, it's a good experience, right? I think we've all seen ads.
And being dynamic enough to, when you have a winner and you get like it right, to being able to plus that up and take advantage of that opportunity.
Yep. Totally agree. Another anonymous attendee. This one's a little heavy in terms of text, but I'm going to try to cut it down for you just a second here. Just trying to do you as many favors as you can. I
appreciate it.
Yeah, always. You send me that outfit, and anything you want. Yep. How are you approaching audiences when buying linear and CTV? Do you view one as a reach extension over the other, or are you looking to reinforce messaging throughout the consumer journey?
So I'd say you can't look at it as a one size fits all, because there are different audiences that consume that. There are people that use linear as a viewing extension. There are people that live like the majority of their video like lifestyle in or consumption in linear. And so I don't think it's a one size fits all approach. I will say with our creative, we're more focused on the screen that you're watching it on and the ad experience than like whether that's streaming or linear TV. Because if people are consuming, there are differences, but we're not trying to put like a timeline component to it in terms of first we're going to get you 3 times on linear and then 4 times over in streaming. Like that's not how it like plays out for an evergreen always on advertiser. So we are trying to make sure that we have the right experience for the audience depending on their viewing consumptions.
Yeah, and on that, how are you evaluating demo versus kind of audience? Is this becoming more of a, something that you're kind of diving into, or do you still feel like, the audience is important, but then also it's fitting within that, that age, sex, demo factor?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is like what you transact upon and then what you get and like what you go through. And so like when you transact in linear, like you may pick a demo, but that doesn't mean that's the only folks you're getting. And so I view you want to transact upon something that's going to drive the right end outcome. And that's everything. And depending on the nature of what you're buying, it could be that what you're transacting is what you're getting, or it could be that you're transacting upon something that's an agreed upon currency and you get a lot more. You have to understand both, but the end result is to have the media dollars work the best to surround the audience at the right frequency and drive the end business's decision.
Makes total sense. And interesting question here that I have for you. We shunned away from the audience for a quick second here. If you could solve one problem within the media business, what would it be? I think I know the answer, but I'm curious of what yours is.
Well, I've thought on this. I'm going to answer and then take it back. And so like,
not allowed.
Because what I would say is what I would like, ideally you want a holistic a holistic view of everything that's happening so that you can find people across all screens and devices to make that like informed decision of the best place to reach them and not have any blind spots. And I say I take it back because I want that selfishly for me. I don't want that to be a syndicate, because then you lose the competitive advantage. And there is a value out there when as soon as you serve up the solution to everyone, like you lose some of the ability to be smarter and to like work around a more complicated ecosystem to truly drive value. And so, I would like that if it's available to everyone, it takes some of the fun out of being able to work through imperfect data to be smarter than other folks, or at least to hope we're smarter than other folks.
First of all, I love that answer. That's, and when we find it, we'll just give it to you. We won't give it to anybody else, right?
Then you'll get the Limu cost.
Done. This is recorded, so you have that. That's on file right there. So like we'll consider this like a little bit of a talk show, right? I'll be a host here. What do you want to plug, right? What's something that you're excited about, from the brand? Like take a minute or two and talk about something that's kind of upcoming that we can kind of sink ourselves into and help you kind of promote that message regardless of the screen.
I guess I'm taking a little bit of a cheat card because I'm going outside of my exact domain where I spoke about some of the media stuff that I'm excited about. And we spoke about Limu and Doug. We do have a really exciting like Limu and Doug integration coming up. It should be out later this month, where I love seeing just the two of them on screen. I get a kick out of, I'm close to it, but I get a kick out of their adventures. They will be joined by a superhero who will be tapping in to give Limu and Doug a little bit of backup in their mission to customize coverage so people only pay for what they need. And so for those of you out there, in the next couple of weeks, be on the lookout for a high flying, I guess you can probably guess, depending on there's one major superhero movie coming out in the next month or a month or so, but super excited to see that work come to life.
That is very exciting. I have a guess of who it is, but I'm not going to spoil it. I want to make sure we didn't sign any NDAs before this, so I want to make sure that a little.
I think I've given it up. People could probably do a quick Google search. And besides, I actually appreciate the fact that people may be out there searching for it now. They'll be excited when they see that Limu and Doug commercial hit the screen.
That's what it's all about. You're going to just see an absolute spike. That's the name of the game. Is this a strategy that you see, moving forward? And Justin's about to cut me off. So is this a strategy that we can expect from you moving forward? Partners can align, thematically with context and content and say, hey, this is coming out. We would actually like, to figure out this is the audience that wants it and that strategy moving forward.
I think it's where it makes sense. Like when we can go through, we want to make sure that we don't want our brand to take a back seat, but when we can integrate and make like the sum of the two hopefully be greater, then that is a huge benefit. And we also, it gets back to time. And I mean, my time and like the production team time in terms of we want to make sure that we invest our production dollars in things that have enough weight to make it worth it. And so when those things align, and we think that there's a creative construct that really like will drive the brand forward and drive the messaging forward and draw the audience in, then it ends up being like a win-win.
Perfect. Well, I know that I'm going to, after this call, follow up with some potential, heavy moviegoers perhaps, and send you a plan on that. So shameless plug from us over here.
Worth it.
Thanks, guys. I jumped in. You caught me. I jumped in that short breath you took, Reed. But I'm glad you guys spoke about that last bit as well. I think it's been, again, another really great conversation. And I think that one of the things that I heard you guys talk about is that, as we kind of grow this space, we're all in this together and really kind of need to be partners on both sides of the table to really kind of improve what we're doing for the consumer. And so I think that, we take that into my account all the time, and trying to be good partners to our advertisers like you, Taylor, and you guys obviously in turn share a ton of learning back with us that really kind of keeps that virtuous cycle or that flywheel moving. So thank you for your time, Taylor. Cannot thank you enough. Really was fantastic. Reed, great job. Good to see you always. Thanks.
Thank you, Taylor. I'll see you soon. Take care. Thanks, Justin.
We have one conversation left, folks. I want to encourage you all to stand up for a moment, do some stretching. I know it's been a little bit of a lengthy time here. I'm sure some of you are multitasking. I actually was just grabbing lunch before I came back for this one. So yes, a little multitasking there. If you are on the West Coast or not yet at lunchtime, maybe you do a little virtual coffee bar for some snacks. I wish we could have sent you something nice for that, but I think next year maybe we'll be back in person. And tune in, because here we go, last session. Get your Q&A questions going. We are going to speak with Junior Reyes. Junior is the head of marketing at Resident Home, House of Home brands expanding from the bedroom to the living room and other areas of the home. At Resident, Junior has helped expand the company's portfolio of home brands from Nectar Sleep to Dream Cloud, and continues to expand their core brands into the UK market. Junior is joined by my favorite Atlanta denizen, Kevin Geary, sales director of LG Ads. Welcome, gentlemen. We're really excited to hear what you have to say and are listening intently.
Well, that was quite a setup, Justin. I don't know if we're going to be able to deliver. I think so, Junior. What do you think?
I think so as well. So, how you doing, everybody? Nice to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yes, I agree. So Junior and I are going to go a little rogue. We are not doing backgrounds. Let's just show everyone how nicely we've decorated our home, our resident home, since we've all been home for 2 years. But before we kick it off to the millions of adoring fans, Junior, why don't we do some quick introductions? Again, for everyone joining us, thank you. I'm Kevin Geary. I'm a sales director with LG Ads on the East Coast, based in Atlanta, and I work with agencies and brands direct like Junior. So I'm going to turn it over to him to introduce himself and a little bit about how he got to Resident.
Hello, everybody. My name is Junior Reyes, and I handle programmatic YouTube and TV here at Resident. We're a portfolio of home brands. I've been with the company for about four years now. Prior to this, my background is primarily in ad tech. I came from previous companies that you might all know, like Drawbridge, Magnetic, Place IQ. But before the big intro to ad tech, I was actually in the engineering side, working at MetLife and the mainframe environment, which is now referred to as cloud computing and the cloud. But yeah, happy to be here and look forward to this conversation.
Cool, thank you. Why don't we start out with a little, I think we've heard this question before, but this is what all adults talk about right now is, what are you excited to be watching, right? What's coming on that you can't wait to see again? And I'm going to throw a little curveball onto you. What are you reading? Because I haven't heard that yet. So we know we're all watching at home and we're all streaming because that's our job and that's what we do. But what are you watching and what are you reading?
In terms of watching, I just finished watching the show on Netflix called The Witcher because the new season is coming out on December 17th, as well as this other show called The Maid. Highly recommended. It's a very humbling show, very well put together. And then on Hulu, started watching the show called Only Murders in the Building. Also a very exciting show. In terms of reading, I actually do a lot of my reading mainly online. I'm not too big on books, so a lot of different articles. Right now, I'm really trying to get into crypto and trying to understand the market and everything that's going around that. That's been very interesting. Outside of that, I'm also very interested in electric vehicles. So Tesla is one of the things that I follow very religiously and try to understand where's the next move and everything and how they're expanding into different areas they're expanding right now. Yeah.
Cool. No, that's great. And it sounds like you certainly are covering a lot of bases there. So thank you. Why don't we start with a little bit of a deeper dive into Resident Home and talk a little bit about the brands and the product lines for all the people that might not be familiar with all of the brands that you represent and are working on.
Yeah, sure. So Resident Home is, like I said before, it's a portfolio of home brands. We focus primarily on the bedroom, and particularly the mattress. So we have several mattress brands that cater to different consumers' needs, from our core brands like Nectar Sleep and Dream Cloud Sleep to some of our newer brands like Awara Sleep, which is a more sustainable mattress, as well as some of another mattress that we have that focus more on a very niche audience called Level Sleep, which focuses on a mattress design for people with specific back pain problems and needs of that sort. And then we just recently launched a new brand called Clover Lane, which focuses on some of the accessories of the bedroom, the bathroom, etc. So bed and linen, bath accessories.
Got it. Great. Thank you. So, in doing the research before we spoke, I saw that, your tagline, your company's tagline is making inspiring products people love to coming home to, right? Mm-hmm. But this past year or two, that has changed. People are now home all the time. A lot of us have been lucky enough to spend a lot of time working on our home, improving it. So just curious, how has that changed your approach to marketing strategy, creative messaging? Do you speak to people that work from home differently than you did prior to kind of, this whole COVID situation?
Great question. So in terms of the tagline, that is definitely like our overarching tagline for the umbrella brand Resident, right? Each of the products have different tagline because they cater to different needs, right? So example, like Nectar is the best sleep at the best value. Dream Cloud is more of an elevator. Life begins with the sleep you deserve, and so on and so forth. So for us, in terms of how we have adapted during COVID, the main thing has been just providing more confidence to the consumer. In terms of the messaging and how we put the product in terms of their practicality and what they are able to do in the bedroom, like we haven't really changed much around that other than provide confidence. How do we do that? We do that by reinforcing the fact that we have one of the longest trials in the mattress industry, right? That is 365 night trials to try our products. In a time like the last year, right? And still where consumers have to really be careful about the product that they're buying, finances are not as stable as they used to be, et cetera. It is important for a company to really stand behind their products and what they're selling. And we stand very strongly behind that by offering a whole year to try the mattress. Because we understand that we have a really good product, but we want to make sure that it is the right product for you. So that's how the messaging has kind of changed. And then as far as like strategy and channels, like we realized even before March 2020, right, when everything started shutting down, that we needed to diversify our marketing mix and be what the consumer is and adapt the messaging, the creative, and the visuals to those platforms, right? So we started accelerating that process throughout all of 2020, and be in most platforms that consumers are, but with a hyper focus on that personalized message, that personalized structure of how that ad looks and feels, let's say on TikTok versus how it looks on YouTube, right? Like instead of leveraging the same video and just taking it and copy and pasting it across the whole channel, really adapting that format and that video for the specific marketing channels. And then to the last point of it, in terms of the working from home culture that has evolved and honestly accelerated, because I felt like, I guess the way technology has been going, we were ultimately going to get there. I think the pandemic just really accelerated that process. It goes back to the messaging again, right? Is understanding that you're spending more time at home. It's hard to find that balance between your work and your life because you're home, right? I'm guilty of that myself, where sometimes I'm like, well, I'm home anyway, so let me get some more done, right? It's like, how do you take a step back and unhustle, right? And really focus on your sleep. So we've kind of tailored the messaging in different ways in different platforms to push that message, to show that, number one, you have the confidence behind a product that we strongly stand behind, but number two, it's really important for you to upgrade this product because it's something you haven't thought about for the last 8 years, for example.
Right. And that's a great point. I was just going to ask that question. So, I saw before that the average person in the US buys a mattress, every 6 to 8 years, give or take. And it's one of those things people kind of don't think about, right? Because it's usually under some covers and some sheets. So can you talk a little bit about, given your broad portfolio of products and brands, how do you balance, your marketing messaging for awareness for something or versus retention marketing? And how are you bringing consumers that have bought a mattress into the fold for some of your other more home-based products?
Great question. So personally for me, like awareness is really relative to like where the consumer is and where you want to position yourself as a brand, right? If you think about a product, like you said, right, it's a very long consideration cycle and the one where people are shifting in. Again, the pandemic really accelerated that process because it made people realize how long they've actually had their mattress. So in terms of balancing the kind of awareness versus retention play, right, for us is really focused on the performance side, right? Most people know of Nectar when they are really ready to make a change, right? Versus other brands might focus on like trying to really find that trigger that causes people to even think about their matches. We've kind of gone a little bit past that and try to focus on that quiet mess middle when the consumer is already there and look at all of our marketing platform from that performance line and trying to fine tune that. So in terms of that balancing out is really thinking about performance first and then brand second, because worst case scenario of performance is that you get brand awareness. And that's how we've been kind of able to build the brand that we have, right? And the growth that we've seen year on year. But overall, again, is really thinking about the messaging of the different platforms. On Facebook, for example, we might focus on a broader audience because the platform itself is less contextual. It's more of a discovery platform, and we want to rely heavily on maybe some of the capabilities of the platform to find the right user. A lot has changed because of iOS 14 or the different things, right? But you then got to lean in on your first party data and leverage that to better inform the platform. On the streaming side, some of those issues might not pertain, right? You're focused really on a household. So how do you identify households that could potentially be in market sooner than others? Is leveraging your first party data along with your third-party data and also platform capability. We use Roku One View, so leveraging their ACR data to try to understand how other brands are potentially marketing to the household and then adjusting our messaging for those specific tactics and flags that we have, and finding the nice balance between what we consider awareness versus what we consider retention.
Got it. All right. So you brought up the dreaded D word, right? Data. We got to talk about that a little bit, right? Because obviously first party data is important to you. Curious how you're leveraging that, successfully. What are you seeing in terms of test and learn? When does third party data become invaluable too? Because I have to imagine you're building a pretty broad consumer base of people that are looking across your product lines. So curious how you're working across both first and third party data.
Yeah. So in terms of, I guess most of our channels, we always use first party data. It helps us with number one, exclusion and ensuring we really are trying to go after net new users given our product, right? Our product is one that not many people are buying multiple of unless they have a big house or they recently moved, so on and so forth. But first party data definitely helps in ensuring that all of our marketing channels are set up for success from the start. But also it helps inform the messaging, it helps inform the similar audiences that we should go after, as well as the marketing platform that we should be in, right? And when consumer comes into our website, tells us how they heard about us, even from channels that we haven't even been in, right? Because they might have seen another mattress ad in that channel, right? It helps us inform, and we collect all this data and parse it out and then segment it out and then use it into other platforms by leveraging partners like LiveRack. In the sense of right now, for streaming, which is one of our newer channels, the way that first party helps us is into aligning what third party segment should we be going after, right? So running retargeting first, getting that data, then working with our partners, in this case, Roku OneView, and trying to understand how do these consumers index versus other third party segment out there. Personally, I really focus on using data from LiveRack because I've worked with them in the past for a very long time, and I know their process of data hygiene and freshness and how much they put into betting their partners and the data quality. But after that point, it's kind of when I go into saying this is when I need third party data, right? It's to expand that reach beyond what I'm able to do with my first party data that is coming in from all the other channels that are prospecting. And then from there is kind of using the third party data to build quote unquote second party data to then, or fourth party, however you want to call it, but essentially taking that data, right? And how do I make better assumptions from it? So in the case where I could be using a third party segment from Oracle on a market for mattress, right? Are the people that have been exposed to a segment, if I take those users and then retargeting with display ad on my, that's some continuation between the ad that they saw on TV and that ad, how does that affect the performance of a campaign that's purely just targeting that third party segment on a single type of creative format and device format, so on and so forth. And then try to supplement the first party data and learn from that and then figure out how to adjust messaging even more.
Got it. Yeah, it's quite a task. So it sounds like you have it partly figured out, if not all the way figured out. And there's always right. I feel like we're all in that boat together. And there's two sides of data, right? There's data that we start with to go after our target consumer, and then there's data post campaign. So you can talk a little bit about how the data that you're getting from partners is shaping decisions and future campaigns, and as you kind of look towards, as you evaluate 2021 and assume starting to look at campaigns and looking strategy for 2022, where's data working, and probably the better question is where is data not working?
Yes, I mean, honestly, in terms of like where data is not working, I feel like it gets harder is when it comes to linear. Linear TV is one of those channels that to this day is one of the hardest channels to measure, and it's getting better thanks to ACR data getting more advanced and the push on connected TV, right? But oftentimes what I found is that leveraging the data that you're getting from your partners to influence some of your TV buys sometimes is not one-to-one, and that's usually because of consumer behavior. I think somebody in the previous call mentioned it, in that although a consumer might be watching TV, right? They could be watching TV in two different ways. One could be a streaming consumer, the other one could be a linear consumer. But these consumers can have completely different personalities, attributes, so on and so forth, that might make them react differently to this ad, right? In some cases, I have gone the route of using my connected TV data to influence my linear TV data, and I found that the results don't usually match up. So in that case, I found that I would say almost 50%, 60% of the time, the data doesn't really work when those decisions are made based on third-party data. Now, when leveraging my first-party data, that's where I've kind of found success by looking at the viewership data, the traffic that's coming in, and then trying to inform my linear buys. I found better success in that sense. But yeah, in terms of like where data is working, I feel like that is in the streaming space because of the identifier that is used to target people, which is that household ID, right? And it's something that now companies like the traders and Roku and even the OEMs are doing a better job at trying to find this unified ID to be able to get better at household targeting. That is oftentimes independent of some of the issues that are happening in the iOS world to some extent, right? Because ultimately, you still need a really good cross-device graph to be able to tie back to that purchase. And usually people won't be able to purchase from a connected TV ad, but there's ways, which I'll get into later on.
Well, why wait? I mean, let's get into it right now.
All right.
You set the stage. I mean, I'm going to take your lead.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the way that connected TV right now is advancing, especially because of the state of the world right now, right? With more people working from home and being at home, it has advanced the technological capabilities of it, but also from the creative aspect has pushed companies to innovate a bit more, right? So working with companies like Innovate, for example, to design interactive units, right? That could lead someone to react quicker to a CTV ad versus that lag time they typically see with linear TV. This was making, for me personally, the shift of budget more appealing, right? Because I can get easier to read, right? Designing an ad that I can leverage a QR code and or an email or potentially something more interactive that will cause that to trigger an effect on their personal device so they can get to my site quicker is something that for me personally is causing me to think of how do I reinvest those dollars to the channel, right? How do I plan for that? How do I test different methods of creative to get that more immediate response that I'm not potentially getting on linear TV or on other channels, like display, for example. Like in display, right, you have a multitude of different things that can cause and affect the quality of the traffic that you get to your site, right? On streaming, you have an ad that is non-skippable, that has average video completion rate of like 98% plus, right? Someone is very engaged unless obviously they get up. But if you build an ad experience that maintains the consumer engaged and causes them to interact as much as they are with the content that they're watching, you might potentially get a better response, quicker, more immediate. And I feel like data can help you influence the bill and the design of such ad and such strategy. And first party data does that very well for us.
Got it. That's great. So you must be excited about some of the kind of new ad formats that we're starting to see across the spectrum, right? Like a couple of players are starting to investigate pause ads, and obviously the OEMs have ads on the TVs before somebody might go into a non-ad environment. So are things like that, things you're starting to look at? How important does that become as, finding that consumer during their journey gets harder and harder, right? Because, CTV, while growing and great, a lot of it is non-ad supported, right? So how do you find somebody before they're before they're happily viewing in Netflix or a non-ad environment?
Yeah, so I think for me, I mean, I remember point back. So back in 2016, I used to work at a company called Magnetic, and at the time, Magnetic's a company that used to leverage second-party search data, not like search data from Google, but at the time we were trying to figure out how do we tie this search intent to then target someone on CTV, right? And that opened up a whole Pandora box for me in terms of understanding the whole resale market for CTV. I mean, it's crazy for display as it is, right? But for CTV, I feel like it has gotten significantly worse, and it's almost getting to the point of how display is. And to me personally, that actually affects the quality of the inventory, how you find these consumers, as well as fraud and trust in that environment, right? So for me, is by simply one, gaining control of my buys, right? I know a lot of brands, big or small, will try to go with an agency because they assume that that's the easiest route. And sometimes it is, right? If you have a good agency and the agency has good practices, it is. But in other cases, it might not be. And the agency might be buying inventory that's being resold through an SSP, VMPD, and so on and so forth, to the point that now costs are so inflated. But also that's where the blur lines start to happen and sketchy things that happen. So for me, to kind of gain the advantage, and it's just anything anybody can do, right? Is go and work directly with the OEMs. Try to talk directly with SSP, trying to understand your supply chain and like optimize your supply chain. But it's hard to do that when you work at an agency, right? And that's for me, it's like where I'd rather bring that in-house and have that internally, so I can have better control of that and avoid some of the nuances around fraud, price inflation because of resellers, and so on and so forth.
So do you feel because of that approach, because you brought everything in-house and are so close to it, that you've been able to mitigate a lot of the concerns that we're now starting to see about fraud and brand safety within CTV?
Yes, to some extent. Because again, from my experience again before working here and working on the vendor side, right? It's interesting to see how blindsided some agencies are when trying to buy media on behalf of their clients. Because number one, they have such a large portfolio of clients to deal with, right? And priorities oftentimes are depending on budgets and whatnot, and time and resources, et cetera, which then oftentimes causes them to issue out IOs to vendors, right? And through that, right, is where you get into the uncertainty of where you're actually running, the data that you can collect, the actual understanding of the mechanism of what you're trying to achieve with connected TV or any channel for that matter, right? Whether it be display, whether it be Facebook, so on and so forth, right? So having it in-house, right, I can move much quicker, act faster, and leverage my first-party data, leverage all the additional data that I'm getting from my other marketing channels, but also have a closer relationship with the platform, in this case, like the DSP that I'm buying through, so that I can understand, right, what capabilities do they have implemented that can mitigate some of these fraud concerns, some of these price inflation, right? Or some of these areas where I might not be able to get transparency, right? There's players out there that are trying to make the supply chain more transparent for connected TV, because quite frankly, right now it's not, right? In some cases, you can see information just at the device level. In some cases, you can see it at the app level. But from a program perspective, like you would in a linear TV environment, it's very hard because everybody's reselling so much that you really don't understand how much you're actually paying versus someone else, right? So I feel like that's the advantage.
Got it. And you brought up another hot button word right now, supply chain, right? I feel like everything gets, I'm not going to be able to buy my son an Xbox this year. He probably doesn't need a new one, but I was thinking about it anyway, but I can't find it anywhere. Has supply chain affected your business dramatically? Were you able to get ahead of it? Just curious, anytime we're talking with a company that could be a problem.
Yes, that's a really good question. One thing I would say to that is that 2020 definitely helped us accelerate our processes for communicating better with the consumer, setting expectations, and being transparent about like, the current state of the supply chain, because the overall infrastructure and supply chain wasn't really ready for what 2020 brought on to everybody, right? We did experience some of it, but it was really about setting those expectations with the consumer, keeping the line of communication, extremely opening, from being super involved on Facebook groups where people were asking about our orders, to like responding to every Facebook comment or YouTube comment, et cetera, like, and really keeping all of our shipping times on the site updated in real time and communicating throughout every single touch point that we have with the consumer. And I feel like that helped us really get ahead of the disappointment that some consumers had, some of the backlash that some of the brands experienced. And not to say we didn't experience anything, but I feel like because of our approach to handling communication and expectation, it put us in a much better position to deal with it. Now we are in a very good spot and very excited to head into Black Friday, Cyber Monday, as I feel like we will be able to deliver on the expectation that we've set with the consumers.
That's great. I mean, congratulations on that, because not a lot of companies we're reading about have not been able to do that level or get ahead of it that level. Do you think that, are you hearing back from customers, to that point that, hey, you're expecting either, you're growing your consumer base through people who have already bought from your company because of the level of service? And is this kind of opened up a new thinking to how you're going to communicate, either, with previous customers, lapsed customers, anything along those lines?
I said a little bit of both. I feel like the number one, I feel like the product speaks for itself, and the quality of it, the value proposition that we're trying to show to the consumer in terms of how strongly we believe this product can give you that best sleep for one of our brands, for Nectar, for example, that best sleep at the best value by providing the 365-night trial, the forever warranty. We really think that you can't just sell a mattress, you also have to sell the whole sleep experience. So, giving a gift with purchase with the mattresses, to include a mattress protector, sheets, and pillows, right? That completes the whole experience. So that in itself, I feel like, speaks for itself in terms of getting consumers to buy from us versus a competitor. Yeah. The communication and setting expectation aspect is something that, as we were growing so fast, is something that obviously becomes very hard to get a handle on. But through 2020, we got a lot better, and feel like we're in a place where we almost kind of perfected it and became our second nature. And I think moving forward and beyond, and even talking to previous customers, we have kind of changed the language and how we talk to them and how frequently we talk to them, how frequently we keep them up to date of every part, even those that have purchased, right? In terms of like their warranty, any questions that they might have, returns, exchanges, so on and so forth, like really being there for the consumer, because at the end of the day, they're the one who are going to improve our product. They're the one that are going to tell us what works, what doesn't work, how should we improve our messaging, how should we change things on the website, so on and so forth. And we do that through passive surveys that we do on previous customers, as well as potential new customers that have come to the site but haven't yet purchased.
Got it. Great. So another thing you brought up piqued my interest, and I just thought of this. So traditionally, mattress has been an in-person purchase, right? You went to the store, you jumped on it. If you brought your kids, you told them not to jump on every one. What was the tipping point for consumers to get over that traditional behavior and be able to buy online and have it delivered home and be comfortable with that? Because we're now seeing that, right? There's so many products that now people used to have to go into a physical store. That's no longer the case. They couldn't for a long time. Your industry specifically is now moving more towards, brands like yourself, where they do their research and you're able to do it, but it's not the same in-store experience.
Yeah, and that's a great question as well. In terms of, I can't speak for all the mattress companies and kind of what changed their behavior for them, but I feel like what helped us start with a D2C first present and then evolve into retail. And I know my sound broken record, really going back to that 365 night trial. When you remove that uncertainty from a product, in that the consumer can feel free to try that product in their comfort of their home, right, through all the seasons of the year, and then decide if they want to keep it or not, I feel like that removes such an amount of pressure from the consumer when making a decision, right? Where if they're looking at one of our competitors that just has 100 nights, right? You can be buying this mattress in the middle of winter, right? Depending on the conditions of your home, memory foam or whatever material can react differently, right? So that's just a very niche example, but that's the things that we communicate with our customers in terms of like why having a year trial is important. And it's something that you're not going to get oftentimes right away from going to a physical store. And not to say that we're not in any physical store. I mean, we're in over 3,000 retail store, and it's one of our growing lines of business that is year over year continues to grow. And we're putting a lot of effort in there. But again, providing the synergy between the two, that even if you're going to a physical store or buy online, you're still going to get a 365 night trial. You're still going to get 300 gift with purchase, which are the pillows, the mattress, protector, and the sheets, and you're still getting your forever warranty. So it's really removing the uncertainty from the whole buying experience, so that the customer can feel free that if they choose not to like this product, then hey, you get your money back. And if the mattress is in good condition, we can provide recommendations as to which charity to donate said mattress. And we've done that a lot of time, continue to do so. We've today donated tens of thousands of mattresses to Salvation Army and many other organizations through the process of, guiding our consumers after they decide, they don't want to keep our product, right? Maybe a different mattress from our portfolio could be better for them. And it's just really having that open dialogue. And I feel like that's kind of what set us apart and caught us to really make consumers feel comfortable with making a purchase like a mattress online.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. That definitely helps, and certainly helps us understand your industry a little bit better. I know we're almost out of time, or we're getting close. I do want to take a turn to next year and beyond. So 2022 and beyond. I'm sure you're already looking 6 months, 8 months, 9 months out, long-term strategy, 5 years plus. What are you most excited about that you're seeing within the industry, and what are you most frustrated with, right? Like, what do you see as working well and you're going to continue on and hope to grow on? And then what do you it sounds like you guys are a very nimble company, and you're pivoting to things that work, and you can shed things quickly that are not. So, I'll leave it at that. Is it data? Is it technology? What part of media, what are you excited about? And what, I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but what are you most annoyed with?
I'll start with the easy one, which is most annoyed with. I think the most annoying thing as of right now, and I feel like it's going to take some time for everybody to get aligned, is on the unified measurement. That is the one thing that annoys me the most, because if the wall gardens and the smaller players, right, don't come together and align on this, something that could potentially hurt the industry, right? When CTV first came out, right, that was one of the biggest issues, because the OEMs have their own identifier, SSPs have their own identifier, the app has their own identifier, everybody has their own thing, right? And it made it hard to buy. It really made it hard to stitch things together, right? And we sometimes overly complicate the idea of being privacy compliant. Privacy compliance, to me personally, boils down to being trustworthy and being transparent with your consumers. And that's how you get them to give you their data, right? And providing a good experience. Simple. It has been so overly complicated by so many big companies out there, not to say any names, that we kind of lost that trust. And that's something that I hope in the next couple of years gets solved sooner. So that's the thing that annoys me the most. In terms of data, definitely excited for some of the things that are going to come out from us continuing to expand into newer channels like streaming, TikTok, and even some of the newer channels that are popping up out of there because of the gaming industry, right? In-game advertising, the whole metaverse experience right there, right? That's going to be another place where there's going to be another TV that a consumer can watch, right? Outside, even though they might be in the living room, they might go into the metaverse to watch a bigger screen because they can, right? People are doing that right now. People are watching live sports through their Oculus and whatnot, right? Like the type of data that you can extract from that is going to be very interesting for me. In terms of technology, shoppable CTV ads is something that I was saying before. I'm excited to work with different partners like Innovate, Roku themselves, et cetera, on these type of format that allows the consumer to now be able to shop directly from the TV. And then from a media perspective is simply, I guess it's both something exciting and also annoying. It's like the transparency aspect of it, particularly with streaming. And right now, and I think I touched on this briefly before, is that transparency to the program level, right? That is available on linear to also be available on connected TV. And it's something that is a bit of an issue in terms of really getting to a contextual targeting point, right? In terms of connected TV, that right now is a little hard unless you really go ahead and do direct buys, let's say with like Hulu or some of the AVOD players out there. But it's something that you cannot do unless you do that, which is quite annoying because it's a more programmatic environment that you technically should be able to do that. But you can because everybody's reselling everything and kind of preventing that transparency. I do love that there's companies like, I think Publica is one of those platforms out there that is trying to work into bringing that transparency. I wish more SSPs will push for that, and the OEMs and the apps and stuff work together to bring that. But I know it's small steps and we should get there soon. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
It did. You answered them all, so I really appreciate it. Thank you. I see Justin is joining us here. Justin, do we have any questions?
I don't see any questions in the Q&A, which is okay because you guys could have probably gone on for another 20 minutes, but we are at time. Junior, thank you so much for joining us. Kevin, thanks for hosting that conversation. I'm impressed that we got to the fourth conversation of the day before mentioning our first source, third-party data. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, Junior, because this was a very in-depth conversation around a lot of the technology, a lot of the advanced capabilities that CT3 bring to marketers like yourselves, who are data first organizations. So I really appreciate you adding that context to the day as well. I hope you guys have a pleasant afternoon where you are.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of our day. Learned a lot from all of our speakers today, talking about all kinds of the challenges and issues and benefits of going beyond linear TV. If you have any questions, obviously follow up with Brand Innovators, follow up with us at lgads.tv. Thank you to everyone for joining us and for tuning in. Again, thank you to our speakers and our listeners. Don't forget, check out Brand Innovators' website to learn about their upcoming events. Tomorrow, Brand Innovators is hosting The Future of Hispanic and Multicultural Marketing, starting at noon Eastern. Have a great day.